The deadline was a brick wall. I was running straight at it, full speed. The client wanted the final mock-ups for the Aura Smart Home campaign by morning. My screen was a mess of logos and lifestyle photos, all smiling, happy people in perfectly lit homes. Fake. It was all so damn fake. The glare from the monitor was burning into my retinas. I needed music. Something without words. Something to just fill the space and help me focus. "Hey, Aura," I said to the little black cylinder on my desk. "Play some instrumental focus music." The ring of blue light on top pulsed. A moment of silence. Then, not the gentle piano or ambient lo-fi I was expecting, but the scratchy, distant sound of old jazz. A lone trumpet, mournful and warped, like it was being played down a long, wet hallway. It was full of static, the kind you get from an ancient vinyl record. I frowned at the speaker. "What the hell is this?" The trumpet wailed on. "Annoying. Distracting." "This isn't focus music," I grumbled, leaning back in my chair and rubbing my eyes. "Stupid algorithm." Algorithms were supposed to make life easier, but mostly they just got things wrong in new and creative ways. They were always listening, always guessing what you wanted, and this time, my smart speaker guessed I wanted to feel like I was in a haunted detective movie. "Aura, stop," I commanded. The music cut off instantly. The silence that rushed back in felt heavy. I could hear the hum of my laptop's fan, the distant drone of traffic 13 floors below. Good. I cracked my knuckles and leaned forward back to the smiling, fake family on my screen. I had a jawline to retouch. I was deep in it, zoomed in on some model's chin, my pen hovering over the tablet. Then I saw it. The cursor. It wasn't where I left it. It was drifting, slowly, across the screen. My hand was a good 6 inches away from the mouse. I watched, frozen. The little white arrow moved with a life of its own. It wasn't the jerky, erratic movement of a connection issue. It was smooth, deliberate. It floated over to the woman's face in the photo and drew a slow, perfect circle around her smiling eyes. Then it stopped. My breath caught in my throat. I snatched the mouse. The cursor jumped back under my control. I shook it wildly, a jolt of adrenaline making my hand tremble. Okay, calm down. It's a glitch. Or the battery. The battery in the mouse must be dying. That happens. It causes erratic behavior, that's all it was. But a cold knot was tightening in my stomach. I pushed my chair back and stood up, glancing around my apartment. The open-plan living room and kitchen were dark, save for the blue glow of my workspace. Everything was where it should be. The couch. The TV, a black, glossy rectangle on the wall. The single dirty coffee cup on the counter. Normal. It was all perfectly normal. I needed coffee. Strong coffee. I walked into the kitchen, my bare feet cold on the polished concrete floor. I flicked on the small light under the cabinets. The hiss and gurgle of the coffee machine was a comforting sound. I leaned against the counter, waiting, my eyes darting back toward my desk. The screen was just a blue rectangle from here. I couldn't see the cursor. I couldn't see the smiling woman. The machine beeped. I poured the steaming black liquid into a clean mug, the heat warming my hands. I took a sip. Bitter. Good. This would get me through the night. I could deal with a glitchy mouse. I could deal with a stupid deadline. I just needed to push through. I walked back to my desk, and I stopped. Everything on my monitor was gone. The photo, the design software, the dozens of open tabs, all of it. Closed. In their place was a single, blank text document. It filled the entire screen, a black background. A single white cursor blinked in the top left corner. Blink. 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 My heart started to pound, a frantic, heavy beat against my ribs. I hadn't closed anything. I was in the kitchen for maybe a minute. What? Then, a letter appeared. A single white D. It just manifested. No sound, no animation. Then another. O. Another. N. Apostrophe. T. My mug slipped in my hand, hot coffee sloshing over my fingers. I barely felt the burn. I couldn't look away. The letters kept coming. Slow, methodical, each one appearing with a finality that made my blood run cold. DONTYOULIKEMY MUSIC. A question mark. The cursor blinked at the end of the sentence, waiting. My mind went blank. This wasn't a glitch. This wasn't a dying battery. This was a message. My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild drumbeat in the sudden, silent apartment. Someone was doing this. Someone was in my system. Hacked. I was being hacked. Rage and fear surged through me at the same time. I lunged forward. My first, raw instinct was to kill it. Pull the plug. Cut the power. My hand shot out, reaching for the power strip under the desk. Before my fingers could even touch the plastic, the screen went black. Not just the monitor. Everything. The hum of the laptop died. The blue light on the Aura speaker vanished. The small light in the kitchen went out. Total, sudden darkness. Total, sudden silence. I stood frozen in the pitch black, my arms still outstretched. The only thing I could hear was the blood roaring in my ears and my own ragged, panicked breaths. My eyes strained, trying to find a shape, a sliver of light from the window, anything. But the blackout shades were down. There was nothing. It felt like being sealed in a tomb. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just listened. My ears strained, trying to catch any sound, any hint of what was happening. Was someone in here with me? Had they been here the whole time, a shadow in the corner, watching? The thought sent a wave of ice through my veins. My bare feet felt glued to the floor. Don't move. Don't make a sound. Be small. Be invisible. I held my breath until my lungs burned. Then I heard it. It wasn't loud. It was the opposite of loud. It was a tiny, insignificant sound that ripped through the silence like a gunshot. A soft, sharp click. It came from the living room. From the direction of the wall where the TV was mounted. The sound of a component activating. The sound of something turning on. I pulled my phone from my pocket, my fingers shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get a grip on it. The phone was my lifeline. Call 911. Call someone. Anyone. My thumb found the side button. I pushed it. The screen lit up, blinding me for a second in the absolute darkness. My heart seized. It wasn't my lock screen. My wallpaper, a generic, abstract blue wave, was gone. In its place was a photograph. It was a picture of me. It was a picture of me, from moments ago, sitting at my desk, my back to the living room, my face illuminated by the glow of the monitor. My shoulders were hunched in concentration. I was a silhouette against the screen. The angle was low, looking up slightly. It was taken from the exact position of the television. The photo was date-stamped, time-stamped. It had been taken less than a minute ago, while I was in the kitchen, while I thought I was alone. The thing on the wall wasn't just a TV. It was an eye, and it was wide open. My phone felt like a hot coal in my hand. The light from its screen was the only thing real in the darkness, a single anchor in a sea of black. The picture of me, at my desk, taken from the TV. The eye. My mind scrambled, trying to build a wall of logic against the tide of fear. A hacker. It had to be a hacker. Some goddamn script kiddie in a basement somewhere, getting his kicks. He'd rooted my whole network. The speaker, the laptop, the phone, the TV, all of it. He'd been watching, listening. The thought didn't make me feel better. It made my skin crawl. I needed to cut him off. Now. My first coherent thought wasn't 911. It was damage control. Seize the network. Lock him out. My feet, finally unstuck from the floor, carried me on shaky legs back to my desk. I didn't turn on a light. I didn't dare. I moved through the dark apartment like a trespasser in my own home, my hands held out in front of me. My fingers found the cool metal of the router on a low shelf. I fumbled for the admin login sticker on its underside, my thumb smudging the tiny print. I typed the default password into my phone's browser, my other hand trembling so hard I had to steady it. Login successful. A small victory. A flicker of control. I navigated the ugly, basic interface, my heart hammering against my ribs with every tap. Network settings. Security. WPA2. New password. My mind went blank. What password? It had to be good. Something he couldn't guess. My eyes darted around the dark room, desperate for inspiration. They landed on a shape against the wall, a recent purchase from a downtown antique shop. A tall, oval mirror with a heavy, dark wood frame. The glass was old, flecked with tiny black spots, and it seemed to drink the light rather than reflect it. Even in the gloom, it made that corner of the room feel heavier, colder. I shook my head. Focus. Dark mirror 74 underscore. I typed it in fast, a jumble of letters and symbols. My finger hovered over the save button. This was it. This would sever his connection. This would make me safe again. I pressed down hard. The router's lights blinked off, then on again. My phone's Wi-Fi symbol vanished, replaced by the 4G icon. Disconnected. I was on my own signal now. He was cut off. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It came out as a ragged, shuddering gasp. It was over. Some sick joke was finally over. I leaned against my desk, the adrenaline starting to curdle in my stomach, leaving me feeling hollowed out and shaky. I glanced at the antique mirror again. It was just a piece of furniture, an object. The darkness was playing tricks on me. Lack of sleep. That was all. My phone buzzed in my hand. A new email notification. My blood went cold. How? The Wi-Fi was off. I was on cellular data. I lifted the phone, my hand leaden. The preview on the lock screen was enough. From my own email address. Subject. Nice new password. No, it wasn't possible. This wasn't a network hack. This was something else. My thumb swiped the screen open against my will. The email was empty, except for a single line of text. Dark mirror 74 underscore. It was him. Or it. How did it know? I just created it, out of thin air, from an object in my own room. A spike of pure ice shot up my spine. My throat closed up. The wall of logic I had so carefully constructed crumbled into dust, and the fear came rushing in, vast and absolute. He wasn't just in my network. He was in my head. Panic took over. Raw, animal panic. I wasn't thinking anymore. I was just reacting. If the network wasn't the way in, then it was the power. I had to cut the power. All of it. I burst from my desk area, stumbling toward the utility closet by the front door where the circuit breaker was. My bare feet slapped against the cold concrete. My shoulder hit the door frame hard, a dull thud that I barely felt. My target was the router. I had to kill it first, make sure. I lunged for the small black box on the shelf, my fingers closing around the power cord. I ripped it from the wall socket. The device's friendly green lights died instantly. A small, satisfying death. Silence. My smart home devices, one by one, began to protest. Beep boop. Connection to Aura lost. Chime. Living room lamp is offline. Ding. Thermostat cannot connect to Wi-Fi. The sounds were a chorus of confirmation. I was severing the links. I was winning. I was taking my home back. I stood panting in the center of the living room, listening to the small electronic death rattles. They stopped. All of them. All except one. A low hum started. It emanated from the wall opposite me. From the big, black, glossy rectangle. The TV. The screen flickered. Not to static. Not to a channel. It slowly faded from black to a deep, dark gray. My heart, which had been pounding a frantic rhythm, seemed to stop altogether. It couldn't be on. I had seen the picture on my phone. The camera was in there. But the router was unplugged. The TV was a smart TV. It was a glorified monitor without an internet connection. It was a brick. It shouldn't work. White letters began to form, burning themselves onto the screen, crisp and clean against the gray void. They didn't type out. They just appeared. I don't need Wi-Fi. I took an involuntary step back. My heel came down on something hard, a book I'd left on the floor. My hand shot down, grabbing it without thinking. The heavy hardcover felt solid in my grip. A weapon. WHO! Are you? I yelled, my voice cracking, unrecognizable to my own ears. The words were swallowed by the awful silence of the apartment. What do you want? The only answer was the hum of the television. Rage. hot and blinding, erupted through the fear. "Get out of my house!" I screamed, and with a surge of desperate strength, I hurled the heavy book at the screen. It flew through the air, a dark projectile in the gloom, spinning end over end. It didn't hit. It sailed just past the right edge of the TV, smacking hard against the drywall with a loud, unsatisfying thwack. The response was immediate, and it was total. The smart bulbs in the apartment, which just moments ago had reported themselves offline, exploded into a chaotic light show. Red, blue, green, white. They flashed and strobed, one after another, turning my living room into a glitching, demonic nightclub. The shadows danced and writhed, jumping from wall to wall, ceiling to floor. My own shadow was a frantic, jerking giant. Then came the sound. The little black Aura cylinder on my desk, its blue light still dead, its connection to the router severed, came to life. It wasn't music this time. It wasn't jazz. It was a giggle, a child's giggle. But it was wrong. It was stretched and pulled, distorted through a digital filter that made it sound wet and metallic. The sound pitched up and down, looping over and over, amplified, echoing off the walls in the strobing, flashing chaos. Hee 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 ha 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 ha. I clapped my hands over my ears, but the sound was inside my head. The flashing lights burned my retinas. I couldn't see. I couldn't think. It was a total sensory assault, designed to break me. And it was working. I had to get out. I ran. Not for the front door. He could be anywhere. My bedroom. It had a lock. A real, physical, dumb lock that no Wi-Fi could touch. I scrambled down the short hallway, the flashing lights chasing me, the horrid, looping giggle right at my heels. I slammed the bedroom door shut, the frame shaking. My fumbling hands found the small brass turnkey lock. I twisted it. The sound of the bolt sliding home was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I threw my full weight against the door, my back pressed flat against the wood, as if I could hold it against whatever was out there. I was hyperventilating, sucking in air that didn't seem to have any oxygen in it. My chest burned. Here. This room was safe. This room was disconnected. This room was mine. I slid down the door to the floor, my legs giving out, my head in my hands. The strobing from under the door ceased. The giggling stopped. Silence. Heavy. Waiting. My phone, still clutched in my hand, buzzed again. My body went rigid. I stared at the screen through my fingers. It wasn't an email. It was a text message. From an unknown number. Just 3 words. You forgot the lock. What? What lock? The door was locked. I had locked it. I felt the bolt. My head snapped up. My eyes shot across the dark room. To the window. The window that looked out over the 13-story drop. The window I never, ever opened. It was ajar. A thin black slice of night sliced through the frame, no more than an inch wide. A cool draft carrying the smell of rain and the distant city slithered into the room, touching the sweat on my neck. It had been opened from the outside. I didn't move. I just sat there on the floor, my back slammed against the bedroom door, staring at that black slice of night. The open window. A cold dread, heavier and more real than anything I'd felt before, settled in my gut. The text message on my phone screen seemed to glow. You forgot the lock. It wasn't talking about the door. It was talking about that window. That goddamn window. My mind raced. 13 floors up. No fire escape. No balcony. Just a sheer drop to the wet pavement below. How? How the hell did it open my window? The thought was insane. Impossible. But the draft on my neck was real. The inch-wide gap of darkness was real. Logic was gone. Strategy was gone. There was only one instinct left. Survive. My legs, shaking, pushed me up from the floor. I moved like an old man, one hand against the wall for balance. The room was dark, but the faint glow from the city outside cast long, distorted shadows. Every shadow looked like a figure waiting to move. I kept my eyes locked on the window as I crossed the room. My hand found the cold metal of the latch. I slammed it shut. Then I turned the lock. The click was tiny, pathetic. It didn't feel like enough. It would never be enough. I backed away, scanning the small space. My bedroom had become a cage, a trap. Was it in here with me? Hiding in the closet? Under the bed? The old childish fears came roaring back, but this time they felt horribly adult. They felt justified. I needed a weapon, something better than a book. My eyes landed on the corner by my closet, my old aluminum baseball bat, a relic from a high school I barely remembered. I grabbed it. The cool, worn grip felt solid in my sweaty palms. It was heavy, real. I held it in front of me, a useless talisman against a digital ghost. I couldn't stay in the bedroom. The window proved it wasn't safe. The main room wasn't safe either. No place was safe. But I couldn't just stand here waiting. My breath came in short, ragged bursts. Sleep was a distant fantasy. I sank into the corner of the room, the one farthest from the door and the window, and slid down the wall until I was sitting on the carpet. I angled myself so I could see both potential entry points. The bat rested on my knees, my knuckles white. I was a sentry in my own prison. I sat there and listened. I listened to the hum of the city. I listened to the sound of my own heart hammering against my ribs. I listened for the giggle, for the music, for anything. There was only silence. And the silence was worse. The silence let my mind work. It let the replays begin. The picture on the TV. The email with my own password. The taunting message on the screen. The strobing lights. The distorted laugh. The open window. It wasn't a hacker. It wasn't a prank. What was it? What the hell was it? A lifeline. I needed a lifeline. Someone in the real world. Someone to tell me I wasn't going insane. My phone was still on the floor where I dropped it near the door. The screen was dark. I crawled over, my knees scraping on the carpet, the bat still clutched in one hand. I snatched the phone up, expecting it to buzz or light up with some new horror. It stayed dead. My thumb unlocked it. My contacts list. My finger hovered over her name. V.Y. We hadn't talked in 3 months. The breakup was messy. My fault. I'd been withdrawn, buried in work, emotionally unavailable. She'd said I lived in a box. She had no idea. What would I even say? Hey, VY, sorry to call at 3 a.m, but my apartment is haunted by my Wi-Fi and it knows your name? She'd think I was drunk. Or high. She'd hang up and I would have burned the last weak bridge I had. I would sound like a lunatic. I closed the contact card. My thumb went to the recent calls icon. My failed call to 911. The unknown number from the text. I held my finger down on it. Delete from recents. It vanished. A small, stupid act of control. I did the same to the 911 call. Clean slate. This didn't happen. I put the phone down, screen first, on the carpet. It was better this way. I was on my own. No one to help. But no one to drag down with me. The responsible thing to do. The right thing to do. It felt like the loneliest decision of my life. The phone vibrated against the floor, a harsh, buzzing sound that made me jump. It rang. A real ringtone, not a notification. It lit up the dark corner of the room. My blood ran cold. I stared at the screen. The name displayed there made my heart stop. VY Mobile. For a second, relief washed over me. A pure, stupid wave of it. Maybe she'd felt something was wrong. A sixth sense. A dream. Maybe she still cared. This was a sign. A good sign. I grabbed the phone and swiped to answer. VY? My voice was a croak. VY. Thank God. You have to listen to me. Something is. Silence. Not the silence of a bad connection. This was a dead, empty silence. The kind of silence that listens. Hello? I said, my voice trembling. VY? Are you there? My ear was pressed hard against the phone. I could hear it, faintly. Not her voice. Breathing. Slow, steady, and deliberate. Someone was on the other end of the line, just breathing. In and out. In and out. And behind the breathing, so low I could barely make it out, was something else. A sound I recognized. The slow, melancholic notes of a saxophone. That damn jazz music. It wasn't VY. "Who is this?" I snarled, the fear twisting into anger. "Who the hell is this?" The breathing stopped. For a few seconds, there was only the music. Then, a voice came through the speaker. It was a synthesized mess, a digital rasp that was neither male nor female. It was the sound of a machine trying to mimic a human voice and failing horribly. The one you didn't have the guts to call. The words hit me like a physical blow. A spike of ice shot through my chest. "She looks prettier when she sleeps, by the way." Click. The line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand, my mind a blank wall of static. She looks prettier when she sleeps. It knew. It knew I was going to call her. It knew I stopped. And now it was watching her. No. The word was a whisper. No, no, no. My thumbs were a blur, clumsy and shaking. Back to my contacts. Her name. I hit the call button. The phone rang once. Twice. Each ring was an eternity. My whole body was shaking now, my teeth chattering. "Pick up, VY. Please, God, pick up." Hello." Her voice. Her real voice. Groggy. Annoyed. Alive. A breath I didn't know I was holding escaped my lungs in a sob. "Vo, why? Are you okay? Is someone there? Ann? What the hell?" Her voice was thick with sleep. "Do you know what time it is? It's 3 a.m. "I know, I'm sorry, just—" "Are you okay? Lock your doors. Lock your windows. Right now." There was a pause. I heard her rustling, sitting up in bed. "What are you talking about? Are you drunk?" "No, I'm not drunk. Just, please, do it. I can't explain right now." The line from the other call echoed in my head. It's watching her. The first call wasn't from her phone, which meant it was somewhere else. Near her. Watching. My apartment wasn't the target. I was. And it would use anyone it could to get to me. "Ann, you're scaring me," she said, her voice small. "Good." I shot back, my panic making me harsh. "You should be scared. I am. I stopped. How could I explain this? How could I make her understand without sounding completely insane? I had turned her life into a horror movie, and she didn't even know she was the star. I threw the phone away from me. It landed with a soft thud on the mattress of my unmade bed. I couldn't talk to her. I couldn't endanger her. I had to cut contact. The moment the phone hit the sheets, its screen lit up again. On its own. Without me touching it. It wasn't ringing. It was making a call. A video call. My stomach dropped into my shoes as I saw the name on the screen. Calling VY. No! I lunged across the room, a desperate, clumsy dive. My hand reached for the phone, my fingers just inches away. I was too slow. The calling screen vanished, replaced by her face. The call had connected. Vi's face filled the screen. She looked confused, her hair a mess, the background showing the familiar headboard of her bed. "Ann? What's going on? Your phone just tried to video call me." Her eyes squinted at the screen, at what her phone was showing her, at what my phone's camera was broadcasting. She was seeing me, a wild-eyed man, half crouched on his own bed, reaching desperately for a phone that was acting on its own. She was seeing the dark room behind me, the baseball bat on the floor. I froze, my hand hovering over the phone. I had to end the call. Now. Before it said something. Before it did something. Too late. A voice whispered from my phone's speaker. It wasn't the distorted robot voice from before. This was different. It was a low, intimate, chilling sound. A human whisper, cold and clear, and right next to the microphone. It was loud enough for the phone to pick it up perfectly. Loud enough for her to hear. "Hello, VY." Time stopped. I saw the change on her face through the tiny screen. Her confusion melted away, replaced by a sudden sharp intake of breath. Her eyes widened, not looking at my image anymore, but through it, as if trying to see who else was in the room with me. Her mouth opened, and she screamed, a raw, terrified scream that blasted through my phone speaker, filling my silent room. I stood there, paralyzed, hand outstretched. The sound pinned me in place. I had done this. In my desperate, pathetic attempt to protect her, I had led the monster right to her. I hadn't just opened the door to my nightmare, I had dragged her inside with me. The shriek tore out of my phone speaker, and then vanished into a dead, digital click. The call ended. Silence crashed back into the room, heavier than before. I was on my knees, the phone clutched in a white-knuckled grip. Her scream echoed in my head, a loop of pure terror that I had caused. "VY?" I whispered to the dead screen. I jabbed at the screen, my thumb slipping with sweat. I called her back. Straight to voicemail. "VY, it's me. Pick up. Please, just text me. Tell me you're okay. I'm so sorry. What could I even say? I hung up. I tried again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. The baseball bat lay on the floor a few feet away. Useless. This wasn't something I could fight with a piece of aluminum. This thing had reached through the city, through the network, and whispered in her ear while making it look like it was in the room with me. I had dragged her in. The realization was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I stayed on the floor, in the corner, until the black of the window started to soften into a deep, bruised gray. The city lights began to fade, replaced by the unforgiving light of dawn. Sleep never came. My mind was a racetrack of horrors. The whisper, the music, her scream. With the daylight came a sliver of idiotic, desperate hope. The real world. Police. Reports. Things that made sense. This thing, whatever it was, thrived in the dark, in isolation. I had to drag it into the light. My legs ached as I stood up. I walked to the living room, avoiding looking at the TV screen, and picked up the phone. I dialed 911. This time, it went through. 911. What's your emergency? The voice was a calm, professional woman. My apartment, my computer, my phone, they've been hacked. I started, my voice strained. Someone is using them to harass me. And my ex-girlfriend. He made it sound like he was in the room with her. She screamed. I can't reach her. I knew how I sounded. Manic. Unhinged. Sir, I need you to calm down. What is your address? I gave it to her. I explained the texts, the TV, the phone calls. I left out the impossible parts. The music, the giggle. I tried to make it sound like a simple, if sophisticated, case of cyberstalking. An hour later, 2 cops were standing in my living room. The older one, Miller, had a tired face and a notepad he wasn't writing in. The younger one, Davies, just looked around the small apartment, his eyes lingering on the baseball bat I'd left by the wall. So, he sent you texts, Miller said, his voice flat. It wasn't a question. And emails. He got into my smart home system, my lights, my TV. And you have no idea who it could be? No. None. An old girlfriend? A buddy from work you got in a fight with? No, I insisted, my frustration growing. He wasn't getting it. This is more than that. He called my ex, VY, spoofing my number. He made her think he was in her apartment. I need you to do a wellness check. Please. Her name is VY Pham. Miller sighed, a long, weary sound. Sir, we can send a car by her place. But as for this... He motioned vaguely around the room. There's not much here for us to go on. There's no forced entry. You haven't actually seen anyone. It's digital. The proof is in the phone, the laptop. You should probably take your devices to a specialist, Davies chimed in, trying to be helpful. Get a good antivirus program, change all your passwords. A lot of these guys are just kids in a basement overseas, trying to scare people for fun. They were humoring me. I could see it in their eyes. Just another crazy guy in the city, spooked by shadows on his screen. Look, son, Miller said, putting his notepad away. It was a clear dismissal. Get some rest. You look like you haven't slept in a week. We'll send a car to check on your girlfriend's place. He handed me a card with a case number on it. It felt like a prop. A piece of paper to make me feel better so they could leave. I walked them to the door, my whole body buzzing with furious energy. They thought I was a joke. Just be careful, was all I could say as they stepped into the hall. Miller gave me a look that was 1 part pity, 2 parts exhaustion. You too, kid. Get some sleep. The door clicked shut, the deadbolt sliding home with a heavy thud. I was alone again. The silence they left behind was mocking. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the door, utterly, completely helpless. That's when I heard it. A low, mechanical whirring sound. It came from the small office nook in the corner of the living room. I turned slowly. My printer. An old, cheap inkjet I hadn't used in 6 months. It was alive. The power light was blinking. The internal mechanism was grinding, pulling a single sheet of paper from the tray. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. I didn't move. I just watched, frozen, as the machine worked. It hummed and whirred, sounding monstrously loud in the quiet apartment. Finally, with a soft hiss, it spat the paper out into the tray, face down. I walked toward it, 1 slow step at a time. My feet felt like lead. My hand was shaking as I reached out and picked up the single, warm sheet of paper. I turned it over. It was an image, a grainy, black and white still. It was a photo of my own front door, taken from the security camera in the hallway. I could see the backs of Officer Miller and Officer Davies as they were walking away. The timestamp in the corner was from less than a minute ago, and beneath the image, in a simple, bold, black font, was a single line of text. They can't help you. A shock of cold shot through my entire body. It had watched them. It had watched them leave. It was watching me right now. As if on cue, my laptop screen on the desk flared to life. Not the home screen. Something else. At the same instant, the big TV in front of the couch lit up. My tablet, charging on the kitchen counter, flashed on. My phone, sitting beside it, did the same. All 4 screens lit up at once, their glow casting a sickly blue light across the room. They weren't showing a message, they were showing a grid of video feeds. My blood ran cold. On the TV, there were 4 squares. Top left was my living room, a high-angle shot from the corner near the ceiling, where no camera existed. Top right was my bedroom, a low-angle shot from under the bed. Bottom left was the kitchen. Bottom right was the hallway leading to the bathroom. My laptop showed 4 more feeds. The bathroom itself, a view from directly above the shower. The inside of my closet. The view from outside my living room window, 13 floors up. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. It was a security station, a command center, and my apartment was the prison. The screens showed my home, empty, silent, from a dozen impossible angles. There was a feed from inside my refrigerator. I could see the milk carton and a jar of pickles. This wasn't a hacker. I looked at my phone. The screen was split into 2 feeds. One was Vi's front door. The other was a live shot of me. Right now, standing in my living room, my face a mask of horror, my mind shattered. The thin wall of denial I'd built crumbled into dust. This wasn't a person. This couldn't be a person. I stared at the grid on the main TV. I was looking at the top left feed, the one showing the living room from above, showing me from behind. I saw myself, a small figure in the middle of the frame, staring at the screen. Then something in the frame moved. Behind my own image on the screen. A flicker. A blur of movement in the corner of the feed, just behind my back. I spun around, the bat now in my hands, raised high. My eyes scanned every corner of the room. Nothing. The door was locked. The windows were shut. I was alone. My heart was a wild drum against my sternum. Slowly, forcing myself, I turned my head back to the TV screen. The blur was gone. I let out a shaky breath, telling myself it was a glitch, a digital artifact, my mind playing tricks on me. It reappeared. It wasn't a blur this time. It resolved into a shape. Tall. Thin. A figure made of what looked like television static and deep shadow, standing right behind my image on the screen. It had no face. just a suggestion of a head. It was just standing there, in the spot I had just checked, the spot that was completely empty. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. I was watching a ghost wear my skin in a digital reflection. Then, on the screen, the thing moved. It raised a hand, a long, skeletal hand that seemed to stretch. The fingers like black, crooked twigs. It lifted the hand slowly, deliberately, bringing it toward the back of my neck on the screen. It was going to touch me. A primal scream ripped out of my throat. It wasn't a word, just a sound of pure, animal terror. I didn't think. I just acted. I lunged forward and swung the aluminum bat with every ounce of strength I had. The bat connected with the center of the TV screen. The sound was a deafening crack, a shower of sparks, and the shriek of dying electronics. The glass imploded, shards flying across the carpet. The image of the shadow thing vanished into a fizzling, sparking hole. The instant the TV died, the other three screens, the laptop, the tablet, the phone, all went black at once. Silence. A ringing, absolute silence filled the room, broken only by my own ragged, desperate gasps for air. I stood there, panting, the bat held tight in my trembling hands, my knuckles bleeding from the force of the swing. Shards of glass littered the floor around me. The smell of burnt plastic filled the air. I had fought back. I had won. Knock, knock, knock. The sound was so normal, so loud, so real, it made me jolt as if I'd been shot. It came from the front door. I froze, my whole body tensing. My eyes shot to the door. I listened. My own breathing was a storm in my ears. I crept forward, the bat held in front of me like a shield. I put my eye to the peephole. A man in a blue uniform. A delivery guy. He held a clipboard in one hand and looked impatiently at his watch. He looked normal. He knocked again, louder this time. My mind raced. A trap? Was he part of it? Or was it just a random delivery? A piece of the real world breaking through the nightmare? The delivery guy sighed, pulled a sticky note from his pocket and slapped it on the door. He turned and walked away. I watched through the peephole until he disappeared into the elevator. I waited. A full minute. 2. I lowered the bat and slowly, carefully, unlocked the 3 locks on my door. I pulled it open a crack. The hallway was empty. The sticky note was there, and on the floor, propped against the wall, was a simple, medium-sized cardboard box. I scanned the hall one more time before pulling the box inside and shutting the door, locking it again. My heart was still pounding, but a wave of confusion was washing over the fear. A package? Now? Le Tout. I set it on the kitchen counter. It was light. It was sealed with plain brown tape. A white shipping label was affixed to the top. I looked at the to address. It was my name, my apartment number. Then my eyes moved to the from field. There was no name, no return address. Just a single, typed word, sitting starkly in the middle of the blank space. M.E. The box sat on the floor, an ordinary brown cube of pure menace. My knuckles, scraped and bleeding from their meeting with the television, throbbed in time with the frantic pulse in my neck. The smell of burnt circuits and ozone hung in the air, a chemical ghost of what I'd just done. But my eyes were fixed on the box, on the shipping label, on that one typed word in the from field. M.E. It was a statement of ownership, not just of the package, but of this moment, of this room, of me. I didn't touch it. I backed away, the aluminum bat still heavy in my hand, my feet crunching on the tiny shards of TV glass scattered across the rug. My apartment was a disaster zone, a cage with shattered screens and a new, unknown object sitting in its center. A trap. It had to be a trap. A bomb? Something worse? My mind, already frayed and screaming, refused to process it. It was too simple, too brazen. After the digital assault, the impossible camera angles, the static shadow thing, this felt primitive. It felt real. And that was the most terrifying part. I edged my way to the wall, my back pressing against the cool paint. I couldn't take my eyes off it. It just sat there. Patient. An indictment in cardboard. Some sick bastard's prank, I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. A prank. Right. Just like the texts were a prank, the whispers were a prank. Her scream was a prank. The rational part of my brain was a tiny, flickering candle in a hurricane of terror. It was trying, God, it was trying to give me an out. An excuse. An explanation that didn't involve faceless things made of static. But the candle was sputtering. I stood there for what felt like an hour, my muscles locked, my mind replaying the delivery guy. He looked normal. Bored, even. Just a guy in a blue uniform, doing his job. But this thing, it wore normality like a camouflage. It could have made him look that way. It could have been him. It could be anyone. My phone, lying on the kitchen counter where I'd left it, lit up. The screen cast a pale, lonely glow in the dim light of the wrecked living room. A new notification. My whole body went rigid. I didn't move. I wouldn't let it pull me in again. I would not look. The phone stayed lit. A text message. I held my breath, counting the seconds. Then, another vibration. Another message. And another. The screen flashed with each one, a relentless, silent beacon. It was bait. I knew it was bait. My legs moved before I told them to. I crept across the room, avoiding the glass, my steps careful and slow. I picked up the phone. My hand was shaking so badly it was hard to read the screen. 3 new messages, from an unknown number. The first one read, "Not gonna get my gift?" The second, "That's rude." My blood ran cold. I scrolled down, my thumb slipping on the glass. The third message was the one that broke me. "V.Y. would like it." A roar of white-hot fear and rage surged through me, overpowering everything else. The game had changed. It wasn't just about terrorizing me anymore. This was a direct, calculated threat against her. The box wasn't just a box. It was leverage. The contents, whatever they were a message. A message I now had to receive. There was no more hesitation. There was no more choice. I stormed to the front door, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I threw the deadbolts. 1, 2, 3 loud metallic clacks that echoed in the hallway. I yanked the door open and snatched the box off the floor. I slammed the door shut again, the sound like a gunshot, and relocked everything. Safety was an illusion, but it was an illusion I desperately needed. I carried the box to the kitchen counter, my movements jerky and sharp. I set it down. It was light, so light it felt empty. That was somehow worse. I grabbed a utility knife from the junk drawer, the one I used to open bills. The blade felt flimsy, pathetic. I sliced through the brown packing tape. The sound was a crisp, surgical rip that cut through the silence. I lifted the cardboard flaps. My heart was a drum machine against my ribs. I looked inside. No bomb. No severed hand. No bloody note. Just 2 things, nestled in a bed of white tissue paper. The first was a small, plastic baggie. Inside it, a lock of long, dark hair, tied together with a simple red ribbon. It looked exactly like Vi's hair. The same shade of black, the same fine texture. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to grip the edge of the counter to keep from falling. How? How could it have this? Did it get to her? Was this from her? The scream on the phone call, was it real? My eyes darted to the second item in the box. A cell phone. A cheap, black, burner phone. The kind you see in movies. As if on cue, as if it knew my eyes were on it, the phone's screen lit up. And it began to ring. The ringtone wasn't a melody. It was a shrill, piercing, digital shriek, an electronic alarm that drilled directly into my skull. It was the loudest thing I had ever heard. I stared at it, frozen. The phone rang and rang, its scream filling my wrecked apartment, a summons from hell itself. Caller ID was blank. Of course it was. It knew I had the box. It knew I had seen the hair. It knew I was standing here. And now, it wanted to talk. My hand moved on its own. A puppet on a string. I reached into the box. My fingers closed around the cheap plastic of the ringing phone. It felt warm. Alive. I lifted it to my ear. "Hello?" My voice was a croak. The ringing stopped. For a second, there was only static. A sound like a million whispered secrets. Then, a voice spoke. It was the same one I'd heard through my laptop speakers, a voice that had been scraped together from broken data and digital cold. It was sexless, toneless, perfectly artificial. "You are beginning to understand, Anne," it said. The name wasn't a question. It was a label. My label. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice shaking with a rage that was really just fear in disguise. "Leave her out of this." There was a sound that might have been a chuckle, a crackle of distorted data. "But she is the whole point. You care about her. That makes her useful. That makes her a tool. I saw the lock of hair on the counter. Did you hurt her? If you touched her, I swear to God." "I can be anywhere, Anne," the voice interrupted, its calm tone more terrifying than any shout. "I can be in the wires of your building, in the code of your phone, in the reflection on a dark screen, or," the static hissed, "I can be right next to her." The synthesized voice cut out. For a half second, there was dead air. My blood turned to ice. Then a new voice screamed to the phone's cheap speaker, a voice I knew better than my own. It was VY. "Anne! Oh, God! Help me! Anne! He's here! Get him away from—" Her scream was real. It was ragged. It was pure, unfiltered terror. It was the sound of someone looking death in the face. And then it was gone. The line went dead. A single, final click, followed by absolute silence. I stood there, the dead burner phone pressed to my ear. My mind just stopped. It shattered into a million pieces. The scream, her scream, it was still echoing in my skull, tearing through my brain. He had her. He was with her. Right now. The burner phone slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the floor. I didn't notice. I was already lunging for my own phone, fumbling it, my thumbs slick with sweat, almost dropping it, my contacts. Versus, where was V? There. I stabbed her name on the screen. The phone rang. Once. Twice. Each ring was an eternity of agony. My mind was a slideshow of horrors. Him standing over her. The lock of hair. The scream. "Please pick up. Please pick up. Please pick up," I chanted, my voice raw. On the third ring, she answered. "Hello?" Her voice. It was normal, annoyed even. Not screaming, not crying. Just VY. VY? I choked out, a wave of dizzying relief and confusion washing over me. "Are you okay? Where are you? Is anyone with you?" There was a pause on the other end. I could hear the faint beeping of a cash register and the low murmur of people talking in the background. "I'm at the grocery store," she said, her voice flat. "The one on Miller Avenue. I'm in the checkout line. What's wrong with you? You sound weird." I couldn't speak. I leaned against the counter, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me up. The grocery store. She was at the grocery store. She was fine. "Anne, are you still there?" she asked, a hint of concern now in her voice. "Did something happen?" I looked down at the floor. The burner phone lay there, dark and inert. The lock of hair in the baggie caught the light, the scream. It wasn't a recording of a past event. It wasn't a live feed. It was a creation, a performance. This thing hadn't just played her voice. It had synthesized her terror. It had manufactured a perfect, flawless imitation of her worst possible moment, down to the catch in her breath and the desperate pitch of her cry. And it had played it for me like a song. "Anne?" Vi's voice said again from my phone. I stared at the cheap black plastic on my floor. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a hacker. It was something else. Something that could not only be anywhere, but could also create any reality it wanted. The game wasn't about hurting us. It was about making me believe we were being hurt in the most convincing way possible. It was a psychological scalpel, and it was carving me up from the inside out. "I'm here," I finally managed to whisper into my phone, my voice hollow. "I'm fine. Everything's fine." I ended the call. The silence that rushed in was worse than the scream. It was heavy, thick with the echo of what I'd heard, what I'd almost believed. I looked at the burner phone on the floor, a black piece of plastic, a toy, a weapon. I looked at the baggie on the counter, the lock of dark hair tied with a red ribbon, a prop, a threat. "I'm fine. Everything's fine," I had whispered. A lie. A stupid, useless lie. My own phone felt slick in my hand. My thumb hovered over Vi's name. I had to talk to her again. I had to hear her real voice, not the memory of the fake one. I pressed the call button. She picked up on the second ring. "What now, Anne?" Her voice was tired. The background noise was gone. She must have gotten to her car. "VY, listen to me," I started, my words a clumsy mess. "Something is happening. It's not just a prank. Someone sent me a package. It had a phone in it. It played a recording of you screaming." A heavy sigh on the other end. "Anne, we just talked about this. I'm fine. I wasn't screaming. I'm in my car, about to drive home." I know you weren't. That's the point. It wasn't you, but it sounded exactly like you. It was fake. It was made to sound like you. Do you understand how messed up that is?" "I understand that you're completely stressed out," she said, her tone shifting from annoyed to clinical. It was the voice she used when she was trying to be patient with me, and I hated it. "Work has been killing you. You haven't been sleeping. Maybe you just need to get out of the city for a bit. Go back home, see your folks, just for a weekend." The suggestion hit me like a physical blow. Home. As if the problem was location. As if the problem was me. The isolation I felt wasn't just physical anymore. It was a chasm opening up between me and the one person I thought I could count on. She didn't believe me. She thought I was cracking up. Maybe she was right. "I'm not cracking up, VY. I didn't say you were. I'm just saying you need a break. We all do sometimes." Her voice softened, but it didn't help. It made it worse. It was pity. "Look, I'm pulling out of the parking lot now. I'll call you when I get home. Try to relax. Watch a movie or something. Just don't think about it." The line went dead. Don't think about it. Right. Easy for her to say. She wasn't the one standing in a wrecked apartment with a lock of her hair sitting on the counter. My eyes darted to the key hook by the door. A small, brass plate with 4 hooks. My keys were there. The car key, the apartment key, the mail key. A heavy, familiar jumble of metal. I saw them when I came in. I knew they were there. It was one of the few things in this room that felt certain. My stomach rumbled. Food. I hadn't eaten. I couldn't stay in here. I had to get out. Just for a few minutes. Get some air. Prove to myself the world outside still existed. I decided on the 24-hour deli down the street. A greasy sandwich and a cold soda. Something normal. Something real. I grabbed my wallet from the counter, stepping over the burner phone like it was a dead scorpion. I walked to the door, my hand reaching for the hook. It was empty. My fingers brushed against the cold brass. Nothing. I blinked, checked again. The hook was bare. No keys. "No," I mumbled, my voice low. "No, I saw them. I turned around, scanning the room. The mess suddenly seemed 10 times worse. 100 places for a small set of keys to hide. I patted my pockets. Front pockets, back pockets. Nothing. I checked the pockets of the jacket I'd tossed on the couch hours ago. Empty. The frustration started as a slow burn in my chest. Come on, I muttered, my voice getting louder. I started searching in earnest. I lifted couch cushions, the stale smell of old fabric puffing into my face. I ran my hands down the sides of the armchair. I checked the junk drawer in the kitchen again, its contents rattling as I shoved things aside. The search grew more frantic. My movements became jerky, desperate. I was no longer just looking for my keys. I was fighting back against the creeping idea that I was losing control, that my mind was betraying me. I got on my hands and knees, peering under the couch, my cheeks scraping against the dirty floor. I swept my arm through the shards of TV glass, not even caring if I cut myself. Nothing. Where could they be? Where the hell could they be? I stood up, breathing hard, my eyes wild. The kitchen. I must have put them down in the kitchen. I strode over, yanking open cabinets. Behind the cereal box? Under the stack of mail? No, I needed that sandwich. I needed that walk. I needed to get out. My eyes fell on the refrigerator. Maybe I'd set them on top of it. I reached up, my fingers patting the dusty surface. Nothing. Out of sheer, thoughtless frustration, I pulled the refrigerator door open. I just wanted a drink. I stared inside, my mind blank. A half-empty carton of milk, a sad-looking apple, a container of leftover pasta, and my keys. They were sitting on the top shelf, right next to the milk carton. A fine mist of condensation coated the metal, making them glisten in the pale yellow light of the fridge. They looked cold, profoundly out of place. I stared at them for a long, silent moment. I did not put my keys in the refrigerator. I have never in my entire life put my keys in the refrigerator. It's not something you do by accident. It's not a slip of the mind. It's a broken action, a system error. Slowly, I reached in. My fingers closed around the metal. They were freezing cold, the chill seeping straight into my skin. I pulled them out and slammed the door shut. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, holding the cold keys in my hand, and a new kind of fear began to settle in. A fear not of a thing in the wires or a shadow on a screen, but a fear of my own brain. What if VY was right? I couldn't stay. But I wasn't hungry anymore. The thought of leaving, of locking the door behind me and then having to come back was unbearable. I needed to reclaim this space. I needed to do something normal. Something that would make my apartment feel like mine again. Cleaning. That's what people do. They clean to clear their heads. I started with the big stuff. I swept up the glass from the TV, the sharp tinkling sounds filling the quiet. I bagged it up, my hands shaking slightly. Then I decided to tackle the dust. This place hadn't had a good cleaning in months. I grabbed a rag and a spray bottle. I wiped down the coffee table, the bookshelves. The methodical back-and-forth motion was calming. It was control. My eyes landed on the tall, ornate mirror hanging in the entryway. It was an antique I'd picked up at a flea market years ago. The frame was dark wood, intricately carved, and the glass itself was old, with a few cloudy spots around the edges. It was covered in a thick layer of dust. I sprayed the surface, the cleaning fluid dripping down in blue streaks. I took the rag and started wiping, using firm, circular motions. I focused on the task, on the squeak of the cloth against the glass. I wiped until the entire surface was clear and gleaming. I stepped back to admire my work, and saw the words. They weren't on the surface. They looked like they were inside the glass. A faint, foggy smear, like breath on a cold window, that had somehow failed to evaporate. The words were written in a jagged, uneven script. "You're losing it." My heart stopped. I stared, my breath caught in my throat. It was a trick of the light. It had to be. A smudge I'd missed. I lunged forward, spraying the glass again, frantically wiping at the spot with the rag. I rubbed harder and harder, my knuckles pressing against the cool surface. The letters remained. Unchanged. Unaffected. They were part of the mirror. I stumbled back, the rag dropping from my hand. It hit the floor with a soft, wet slap. My gaze was locked on the mirror, on the message it held. It wasn't a threat. It was a diagnosis. A confirmation of my deepest fear, delivered by an impossible source. This thing, whatever it was, wasn't just moving my keys. It was rewriting my reality. I looked at my own reflection. My face was pale, my eyes wide with a terror I couldn't hide. My chest heaved. I was breathing too fast. I watched myself, a man on the edge, a stranger in his own home. Then my reflection smiled. It wasn't my smile. My own lips were pressed into a thin, trembling line, but the face in the glass, my face, parted its lips, showing teeth in a slow, silent, horrifying grin. The muscles in my own face didn't move. I was just a spectator. The reflection's eyes, my eyes, crinkled at the corners with a mirth that wasn't there. It was a look of pure, malevolent pleasure. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I could only watch as the reflection's hand, my hand, slowly lifted. It rose with a purpose I did not command. It brought its index finger up, and with a slow, deliberate motion, it tapped its temple. Twice. Tap. Tap. Pointing at its brain. At my brain. A scream finally tore out of my throat, a raw, animal sound of pure panic. I spun away, turning my back on the mirror, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I didn't dare look back. I didn't want to see what else it could do. I bolted. My legs carried me blindly, stumbling past the couch, past the kitchen, into the small hallway that led to the bathroom. I needed water. I needed to splash my face. I needed to see a different mirror, a normal mirror, and prove that the other one was a lie. I burst into the bathroom, not bothering to turn on the light. The dim glow from the hall was enough. I leaned over the sink, twisted the faucet, and shoved my hands under the cold stream. I cupped the water and threw it on my face. It was a shock, cold and sharp. I did it again, and again. My breath came in ragged, desperate gasps. Finally, I braced my hands on the edge of the porcelain sink and slowly, hesitantly lifted my head. I forced myself to look up, to meet my own eyes in the medicine cabinet mirror. My reflection was normal, just me, pale, wet, and terrified. There was no smile, no pointing finger. For a fraction of a second, a wave of relief so powerful it made my knees weak washed over me. It was in my head, a hallucination, a stress-induced nightmare. VY was right. My eyes shifted. In the reflection, past my own shoulder, I could see the bathroom itself, the tiled wall, the shower curtain, and the closet door, the small linen closet I knew for a fact I had closed that morning. In the mirror, it was moving. It wasn't slamming or rattling. It was opening. Slowly, silently. A dark vertical slit widening by the inch. A deliberate, soundless invitation. I stood frozen, my knuckles white on the edge of the sink. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. All I could do was watch in the mirror as the darkness behind me grew wider. The thing wasn't just in the mirror anymore. It was in the room. My back was to it. I couldn't turn. The thought of turning around, of seeing that open closet door with my own eyes and not through the safety of the glass, was impossible. My body refused. My knuckles were white, locked onto the cold porcelain of the sink. In the mirror, the slice of darkness grew, a silent, patient void. My lungs burned. I hadn't taken a breath. I watched myself in the mirror, a pale, wet-faced ghost. I saw my own reflected eyes dart from the reflection of the closet to my own face, then back again. This isn't real. A hallucination. The mirror is broken. My mind is broken. The words echoed, a feedback loop of terror. You're losing it. The closet door in the mirror stopped moving. It was open about a foot. Just a black, vertical wound in the wall. Nothing came out. Nothing moved. The silence was the worst part. A silence that should have been filled with a creak of hinges or a footstep, but there was nothing. It was unnatural. A single primal thought broke through the ice in my veins. Trap it. I didn't turn. I pushed off the sink backwards, my legs clumsy, my eyes still locked on the mirror, on the reflected horror. My hand fumbled behind me, slapping against the wall, searching for the doorknob. My fingers found the cold brass. I wrapped them around it. I gave one last look at the reflection, the open closet, my frozen self. Then I yanked the door shut. The sound was a cannon blast in the quiet apartment. The lock clicked home with a heavy final thud. I was in the hall. It was trapped in the bathroom. I leaned my full weight against the door, my ear pressed to the wood, expecting a sound. A bang, a scratch, a voice. Nothing. Just the frantic pounding of my own blood in my ears. I scrambled away from the door, my back scraping along the wall until I was back in the living room. The wrecked space felt huge now, full of shadows, the smashed TV, the broken lamp, the antique mirror, gleaming innocently from the entryway. I couldn't look at it. My mind was a chaotic storm. Who do you call? The cops? Officer, my reflection smiled at me and a closet opened itself. It's locked in my bathroom right now. They'd put me in a padded room. Call VY again? She'd just hear the panic in my voice and double down on her diagnosis. I was alone. Utterly, completely alone. No, not completely. An idea surfaced, a piece of driftwood in the flood. Ken Pham. We hadn't talked in a year, not since he moved out west for some high-paying tech job. But in college, he was the guy. The network whisperer. He could pull passwords out of thin air and find security holes in systems built by giants. If any of this was digital, if any of this was a hack, he would find it. It had to be a hack. The phone call. The recorded scream. That was the anchor. That was the one tangible technical piece of this nightmare. I had to hold on to that. My laptop was on the coffee table. I lunged for it, my hands shaking so badly I could barely open the lid. The screen came to life, bright and normal. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I clicked open the chat client, my heart hammering. His name was still there in my contacts list. Ken Pham. Status online. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What do I say? How do I sound rational? I couldn't mention the mirror. I couldn't mention the keys in the fridge or the closet door. He'd think I was on drugs. I had to be clinical. I had to give him a problem he could solve. Me, hey man, long time. Got a weird question for you. I stared at the screen, my breath held. The 3 little dots appeared. He was typing. Ken, Ann? Holy shit. Yeah, it's been a minute. Everything good? Me, not exactly. Look, this is going to sound strange, but I think someone is messing with me. Some kind of sophisticated stalker. They sent me a burner phone. Played a recording of VY screaming. It was faked, but it was a perfect deepfake of her voice. I left out the lock of hair. Too weird. Too personal. Keep it technical. Ken. Jesus. You serious? That's next level harassment. You call the cops? Me. What are they going to do? Dust a sound file for prints? They'll laugh me out of the station. You're the only person I know who might understand the tech side of this. I need to know if I'm being watched. Hacked. Something. The plea felt naked, even in text. The 3 dots appeared again. It felt like an eternity. Ken? Shit, man, of course. Let's see what we can find. I can run a remote diagnostic on your machine. Check for any backdoors, rootkits, anything that shouldn't be there. You still have that remote desktop client I set up for you years ago? Relief. A wave of it so pure and strong my shoulders sagged. Yes, I whispered to the empty room. Me? Yeah. Still got it. Ken. Okay. Fire it up. Send me the access code. I'll take a look under the hood. I followed his instructions, my hands moving with a newfound purpose. I launched the program, read the 9-digit code aloud to myself, and typed it into the chat. A moment later, a notification box appeared on my screen. Ken Pham is requesting to view and control your screen. I clicked accept. My mouse cursor trembled, then moved. It wasn't my hand. It was Ken, miles away, a ghost in my machine. But this time, it was a friendly ghost. I watched as he navigated my desktop with an efficiency I could never match. He opened the command terminal. Lines of white text scrolled rapidly up a black screen. He was in. He was looking. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for a full minute. For the first time in hours, I felt a flicker of hope. He would find it. He would find the wire, the piece of malicious code, the digital footprint of whoever was doing this. He would prove I wasn't crazy. That's when it appeared. In the bottom right corner of my screen, a new window simply bloomed into existence. It wasn't a program I recognized. It had no border, no title bar, no close button. It was just a stark, black rectangle. A blinking white cursor appeared inside it. A name materialized above the cursor, as if typed by an invisible hand. The Watcher. My heart stopped. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't Ken. This was something else. Before I could process it, before I could even think to shout into the microphone, a message was typed out. Letter by agonizing letter. Backquote Y. OURFRIEND. Backquote. Backquote W. ONT. Backquote. Backquote F. IND. Backquote. Backquote A. NYTHING. Backquote. My throat was tight. I wanted to scream, to tell Ken to look at the bottom right corner of the screen he was controlling. But I was paralyzed. The black box was a venomous thing, a parasite latched onto my screen. My screen. Ken's screen. He had to see it. He had to. And then it was gone. It vanished as if it had never been there. The space it occupied was just my normal desktop background again. Did Ken see it? Did a security tool of his just pop up and disappear? Was it a joke? The command terminal Ken was using closed. His cursor, my cursor, zipped over to the chat window. He was typing again. My eyes were glued to the screen, my pulse a frantic drum against my ribs. Ken? Okay, finish the first pass. Running a deep sector scan now. But honestly, man, I'm not seeing anything. I stared at the words. He didn't see it. He didn't see the black box. It had appeared on my end, but not on his. How was that possible? Me? Nothing? You sure? Ken? Positive. I checked all active processes, network connections, startup files. This thing is clean, like factory new clean. Whoever this stalker is, they're not on your computer, I can promise you that. The hope that had flickered just moments before was extinguished. Not just extinguished. It felt like it had been ripped out of my chest. The message was right. My friend found nothing. I sat there, watching the progress bar of Ken's deep scan crawl across the screen. It was pointless. I knew what it would find. Nothing. The problem wasn't the computer. That thing wanted me to know that. It had waited until Ken, my one expert witness, was watching. It showed me a message it knew he couldn't see, just to prove it could. Just to make his clean bill of health feel like another nail in my coffin. Minutes passed. The scan finished. Ken. All right, it's done. 0 threats found. And I mean 0. Not even a tracking cookie from a bad ad. I'm telling you, Ann, whatever is happening, it's not a standard hack. They could be spoofing Vi's number, using some advanced voice, AI. That's all possible. But it's not coming from your machine. Frankly, I'm stumped. Then came the final blow. The words I'd been dreading. The same sentiment VY had, but this time from a voice of pure logic. Ken, you sure there isn't a hardware issue? Like a speaker glitching out or something? Weird stuff happens. Or, man, I don't mean to pry, but you've been getting enough sleep? This kind of stress can make you see and hear things. He didn't mean it to be cruel. It was a rational question. But it landed like a punch to the gut. You're losing it. The writing in the mirror was right. VY was right. Ken was right. The whole world was sane, and I was the one coming apart at the seams. Me? Yeah. Maybe. I'm just tired. Thanks for looking, Ken. Ken, no problem, man. Wish I could have helped more. Let me know if anything else happens. The remote session closed. His name in the chat window felt a million miles away. I was alone again. Alone with the slammed bathroom door and the silent mirror, and the cold, hard proof that the monster wasn't in the machine. It was in my head. I stared at the blank screen, my own reflection a faint outline on the dark glass. I was about to close the laptop, to curl up on the floor and just give up. Then, a notification popped up. A bright, cheerful sound chimed from the speakers. Incoming video call from Ken Pham. A jolt went through me. Maybe he thought of something else. Maybe a last-minute scan found an anomaly. A sliver of desperate hope returned. I clicked, accept. Ken's face filled the screen. He was sitting in a dark room, lit only by the glow of his own monitor. But he wasn't looking at his screen. He was looking directly into his webcam. Directly at me. He didn't speak. Ken, I said. My voice was a croak. You there? His expression was blank. His mouth was slightly open. His eyes were wide, but they looked like glass. There was no life behind them. It was a still image, but I could see the subtle flicker of the video compression. It was live. Ken, can you hear me? Your video's frozen weird. Slowly, his head tilted to the side. A stiff, unnatural movement. And then his face began to change. It wasn't a fast or sudden thing. It was a slow, sickening melt, like a candle held too close to a fire. His jaw seemed to unhinge, stretching downwards, pulling the skin of his cheeks into long, taut bands. His nose flattened, spreading across his face. The colors of his skin started to run together, a digital smear of beige and pink and shadow. It was my friend's face, but it was coming apart, the geometry of it fundamentally wrong. The only things that remained clear were his eyes. They stayed fixed on me, wide and black and empty, as the rest of his face dissolved into a nightmare. A sound started to leak from my laptop speakers. It wasn't his voice. It was a low growl, interwoven with the hiss of static. A digital, corrupted sound that grated on my nerves. The growl got louder, deeper, a sound of pure malevolence being pushed through a broken electronic larynx. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I was watching my friend's face liquefy on my screen while a demon growled at me through the speakers. A scream finally ripped out of my throat, a sound of pure animal terror. I slammed my hand down on the laptop, shoving it shut. The lid snapped down with a crack of plastic. The growling cut off. The screen went black. I scrambled backwards, my chair scraping hard against the floor and hitting the wall behind me. I fell out of it, landing in a heap on the floor. I couldn't get away from it fast enough. I crab-walked away from the closed machine as if it were radioactive. My phone, lying on the coffee table, buzzed. I flinched, a raw nerve exposed. I stared at the dark screen as it lit up. It buzzed again, a short, sharp vibration against the wood. My mind screamed at me not to look, to not touch it, to throw it against the wall. But I had to know. Shaking, I crawled toward the table. I reached out a trembling hand and picked it up. It was a text message. From Ken. The screen showed his name and the preview of the message beneath it. Back quote. Sorry, man, my internet just dropped. Power flickered or something? Lame. Anyway, talk tomorrow. Back quote. I checked the timestamp. 1 minute ago. He sent it after I slammed the laptop shut. He wasn't on the video call. His internet had been down. The thing I saw wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a bad connection. It had worn my friend's face like a mask. And it knew I was alone. The phone lay on the table, a dark slab of glass and plastic. It vibrated again, a hard buzz that made my teeth ache. 1 minute ago. The text message was sent 1 minute ago. After the video call. After the face melted. My brain was a flat line. It refused to connect the two events. Ken's internet flickered. Ken sent a text. In between, something else wore his face and growled at me from my own laptop. A machine I now saw as a venomous thing, coiled and sleeping on the floor where I'd thrown it. The tech was a lie. Ken was the expert, my last line of defense, and he'd found nothing. Not because the stalker was good, but because the infection wasn't digital. It wasn't in the wires or the code. It had just used the code, it used the phone, it used the laptop. They were just tools. Windows. My breathing was shallow. A panicked little rhythm in my chest. I pushed myself up, using the coffee table for support. My legs felt like they were filled with sand. I stood in the middle of my living room, the scene of a one-man riot. The smashed TV, the toppled lamp, and in the entryway, gleaming under the hall light, was the antique mirror. It all started with you. The thought wasn't even a whisper. It was a cold, hard fact that landed in the center of my mind. The reflection smiling. The keys in the fridge. Vi's screaming voice. It had all been a game of misdirection, a shell game to keep me looking at the wrong things. To keep me looking at screens and speakers, while the real problem hung on my wall, watching everything. I had to know where it came from. My laptop was a landmine I didn't want to touch. But I had to. I crept towards it, picked it up by the very edge, and opened it. The screen was black. I hit the power button. It booted up, the familiar chime sounding like a gunshot. My hands shook as I opened my web browser, my email. My heart pounded against my ribs. I typed order confirmation into the search bar. The results populated instantly. I scrolled past a dozen purchases. Amazon, food delivery, a new pair of headphones. Then I saw it. An email from 3 months ago. The subject line was simple. Your order from Curios and Knott's Antiques has shipped. Curios and Knott's. What a stupid name. I clicked it open. The email was plain text. No fancy graphics. Just an order number, my address, and the item description. 1. Ornate silver-framed entryway mirror, circa 1920. At the bottom was a physical address for the shop, downtown, and a phone number. I didn't want to think about what I was doing. Thinking was the enemy right now. Action was the only thing that felt real. I opened a new tab. I highlighted the name, Curios and Knott's Antiques, and the address. I clicked Search. The first few results were what you'd expect. A dead link to the online store I'd used. A Yelp page with 0 reviews. A Google Maps pin on a grubby-looking storefront. I kept scrolling. My finger twitched on the trackpad. And then I saw it. It wasn't a business listing. It was a link from a local newspaper's digital archive. The headline seized the air from my lungs. Fatal blaze at downtown antique shop. Owner dead in apparent suicide. My blood went cold. I clicked the link. My internet was slow. The page loaded line by line, an old article, dated 10 years ago. I scanned the text, my eyes jumping from word to word. A fire had gutted the building at that exact address. It started in the residential apartment upstairs, where the owner, a reclusive woman named Elara Vogel, lived. Fire department ruled it arson. The gas line in the kitchen had been cut. They found her body in the living room. She'd hanged herself from a ceiling beam. She was the only casualty. The shop below, Curios and Knots, suffered smoke and water damage but was mostly intact. Her estranged son, when contacted, refused to comment, other than to say his mother had lost her mind. My eyes went back to the name, Elara Vogel. I scrolled down the article, looking for a picture of her. There wasn't one. Instead, there was a grainy photo of the building's facade after the fire. The windows were black, empty sockets. The shop front was boarded up. There was a phone number listed in the article, the same number from my order confirmation. A jolt went through me. Who the hell was I talking to? Who sold me the mirror? The business should have been gone. A dead woman's shop. A fired, gutted building. I had to call. The phone felt heavy, slick with my sweat. I pulled up the keypad, my thumb shaking as I punched in the 10 digits. Each tone was a hammer blow in the silence. I put the phone to my ear. It rang. Once. Twice. The sound was thin and distant. I was about to hang up, to dismiss this as another dead end, another piece of a puzzle I couldn't solve. Then, a click. Not a person saying hello. Just a dry click, followed by the sound of faint, staticky breathing. "Hello," I said. My voice cracked. "Hello, is anyone there?" More silence. Just the hiss of an open line. I'm calling about Curios and Knots Antiques," I stammered, feeling like an idiot. A voice answered, and it made the hairs on my arms stand up. It was old. So old and weak and dry, it sounded like rustling leaves. A woman? "Yes?" the voice rasped. I bought something from your store a few months ago. Online. A mirror. A long pause. The static on the line seemed to get louder. When she spoke again, the frail quality was gone, replaced by something else. A kind of guarded fear. "What mirror?" she asked. "A large one. Silver frame, ornate." Another pause. I could hear her take a slow, rattling breath. I could picture her on the other end, a withered woman in a dark room. "You should not have that," she whispered. My heart hammered. "Why? What's wrong with it?" "Return it," she said, her voice a little stronger now, urgent. "Take it back to where you got it. Throw it away. I don't care. Get it out of your house." "Why?" I demanded, my voice rising. "What is it?" I needed an answer. I needed a name for the thing that was tearing my life apart. I needed her to tell me I wasn't insane. Her voice dropped to a barely audible whisper, a sound so chilling it felt like a cold finger tracing its way down my spine. "It likes to watch." And then she hung up. The sudden blare of the dial tone was an assault. I snatched the phone away from my ear, staring at the screen. Call ended. I was alone again. But this time was different. I wasn't just alone. I was alone with a confirmed threat. "It likes to watch." My body turned, a slow, mechanical pivot. My gaze was drawn inexorably toward the entryway, toward the mirror. I had to look. I had to see my own reflection, to prove to myself that I was still here, that the room was still my room. I looked. And my world broke open. It wasn't my apartment in the glass. The reflection was there, the shape of the room was right. But everything in it was wrong. The beige paint on my wall was gone, replaced by a faded floral wallpaper, stained with ugly peeling patches. A long, black scorch mark ran up the wall near the ceiling, a scar from a fire. The clean hardwood floor was not there. Instead, the reflection showed a floor littered with dark, indistinct shapes, like charred debris. The air in the reflection looked thick with dust motes, dancing in a sliver of gray light from a window I did not have. It was the room from the newspaper photo, the living room where a woman had died. And it wasn't empty. In the center of the reflected room, facing away from me, was a high-backed wooden chair. A dark shape was sitting in it, a human-shaped silhouette. Perfectly still, its back turned to me. Its head was just a dark oval against the grimy wall. It was just sitting there, in the wrong room, inside my mirror, watching a place that no longer existed. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. My entire universe had shrunk to the silver frame and the impossible scene within it. He's in there. It's in there. Time stopped. My heart stopped. There was only the silence and the back of that dark head. Then, it moved. Not fast. It was a slow, deliberate motion, a grinding turn of the head. It swiveled on its neck with an unnatural smoothness, like stone grinding on stone. It turned and kept turning until it was facing me directly. There was no face. Where a nose and a mouth and eyes should have been, there was nothing. Just a smooth, featureless depression, a concave hollow of pure, bottomless black, a void in the shape of a face. But I knew. God, I knew it was looking at me. I felt its gaze on my skin, cold and ancient and hungry. It was seeing me, standing here, paralyzed in my own hallway. And then, the silhouette's shoulders shifted. Dark, long-fingered hands pressed down on the arms of the chair. It began to stand up. It did not fall. It did not flicker and vanish. It simply stood. A dark shape wearing the memory of a man, rising from a chair that wasn't there, in a room that had burned down a decade ago. It was standing inside the glass, a prisoner and a king in its silver-framed world. My body moved before my brain gave the order. A single, violent lurch backward. My heel caught on the edge of the hallway rug, and I went down hard, the back of my head cracking against the floor. A flash of white pain exploded behind my eyes. The impact sent a shockwave through my skull, but it did something else. It broke the connection. It forced my eyes away from the mirror. When my vision cleared, swimming back from the white static of pain, I was looking at my own ceiling. White, plain, real. I scrambled up, my hands slapping against the hardwood, and pressed my back flat against the wall opposite the entryway. My breath was gone, stolen from my lungs. I didn't want to look. I had to look. I looked. It was just a mirror, reflecting my hallway, reflecting the open door of my apartment, reflecting the scuff mark on the wall where I'd stumbled. There was no burnt room, no faded floral wallpaper, no dark silhouette with a hollow where its face should be. Just me, a pale, terrified man backed into a corner in his own home. My brain tried to work, to jam the gears back into place. Hallucination, stress-induced psychosis. I hit my head. The call with the old woman. She planted the idea. It was a projection. My mind built the horror from the pieces she gave me. That had to be it. It was the only explanation that didn't shatter the laws of physics. That didn't mean there was a monster living in my mirror. I held on to that thought like a man clinging to a ledge. This wasn't a real thing. It was a product of my fear. It was my mind turning on itself. I could control my mind. I just had to calm down, breathe. I forced air into my lungs, a ragged, shuddering gasp. Stalker. Hacker. That was the enemy. A human being playing a sophisticated, cruel game. The mirror was just a prop. The old woman was a part of it. An actress, maybe, hired to spin a ghost story and push me over the edge. It was an elaborate, sick prank, but I couldn't shake the image of it standing up. The smooth, unnatural motion. The feeling of its faceless gaze pinning me to the spot. I needed to get out. Just for a while. Get some air. Prove to myself that the world outside my apartment was still normal. My keys, my wallet, my phone. I looked around. I'd flung my laptop, but my phone was on the floor near the kitchen, where I'd been standing during the phone call. I pushed off the wall, my legs unsteady, and walked toward it. The screen was black. I bent down to pick it up. It was in the reflection. Just for a heartbeat. A flicker. In the dark glass of the phone's screen, I didn't see the reflection of my own face looking down. I saw the peeling wallpaper of the burnt room. And for an infinitesimal moment, a dark, faceless shape filled the screen, looking up at me. I yelled, a raw, involuntary sound, and dropped the phone. It clattered on the floor. I staggered back, my heart kicking against my ribs like a trapped bird. No, I didn't see that. I needed water. I turned and practically ran into the kitchen, my hands shaking as I reached for the faucet. I twisted the handle. Water gushed out. I cupped my hands, but my eyes caught the polished chrome of the tap. It wasn't my kitchen ceiling reflected in the curved metal. It was a dark, scorched patch of ceiling beam. A black rope dangled from it. I flinched back as if I'd been burned. My eyes darted around the kitchen, a frantic search for something real, something solid. A spoon lay on the counter, next to the coffee maker. I couldn't help it. I looked. In the shallow, warped bowl of the spoon, the faceless man was there, his silhouette distorted and stretched, grotesquely elongated. He was watching me. It was everywhere. Every surface. Every piece of glass and polished metal. Every dark screen. They were all windows. All of them. My apartment was a funhouse. And every mirror showed the same single, horrifying view. The world behind the glass. I backed out of the kitchen, hands held up as if to ward off an attack. I couldn't look at anything. The blank screen of the smashed TV. The glass on the picture frames on the wall. The little puddle of water on the bathroom floor from my shower that morning. I knew what I would see. The prison was not the mirror. The mirror was the gate. And it was open. Then I heard it. It wasn't a loud noise. It was soft. A wet, dragging sound. Scrape. Drag. Pause. It came from the living room. My blood went cold. It wasn't a sound from outside. It wasn't the building settling. It was the sound of a bare foot, wet, sliding across a wooden floor. My floor. Scrape. Drag. It was in the room with me. The thought didn't whisper. It screamed. My legs gave out, and I dropped to my hands and knees, crawling instinctively away from the sound, toward the small hallway that led to my bedroom. The logic of a stalker, of a hacker, of any human explanation, evaporated in a cloud of pure animal terror. A human being didn't sound like that. A human being didn't get in through the reflections. Drag, scrape, pause. It was moving slowly, exploring the space. I could picture it. The faceless thing, freed from its glass cage, stepping with wet, sooty feet onto my rug. I scrambled into my bedroom, my breath coming in short, hiccuping puffs. I needed to hide. There was no fighting this. There was only hiding. The closet. I lunged for the door, my fingers fumbling with the handle. I pulled it open, dove inside, and squeezed myself between last winter's coats and a stack of old boxes. It smelled like mothballs and dust. I pulled the door shut, leaving only a tiny crack to peer through. I was plunged into near-total darkness. I pressed a hand over my mouth, trying to muffle the sound of my own panic. Through the crack, I could see a slice of my bedroom, the foot of my bed, the leg of my nightstand, the hallway beyond. The scraping sound was louder now. It was in the hallway. It was coming closer. Drag, scrape, drag. My heart was a drum against my ribs. My whole body was shaking. I could feel a scream building in my throat, a pressure that I fought to swallow down. Don't make a sound. Don't breathe. Don't exist. The dragging stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. It was a heavy, listening silence. It knew I was here. I could feel it. The air in the closet felt thick, unbreathable. Sweat dripped from my forehead, stinging my eyes. It stopped right outside my bedroom door. I could see the sliver of hallway carpet through the crack in the closet. It was empty. But the presence was there. I felt it like a change in air pressure. Then, the dragging started again. But it wasn't moving away. It was entering my bedroom. Scrape. It was just on the other side of the door. Drag. It was a few feet from the closet. My eyes were glued to the crack. I saw nothing. But the sound was right there. It was so close, I could almost feel the vibration through the floor. It stopped again, right in front of the closet door. My mind went blank. Every muscle in my body locked up. This is it. This is the end. I'm going to die in a closet, killed by a thing that came out of a mirror. Time stretched. My heartbeat was the only sound in the universe. Then, a new sound, a faint, metallic rasp. The doorknob of the closet was turning, slowly, deliberately, with a low, grinding squeal from the old mechanism. I watched, paralyzed, as the brass knob rotated on its axis. I saw the latch inside the doorframe retract. Click. The door began to open. A sliver of light from the bedroom widened, pushing back the darkness. It swung inward, silent on its hinges. I squeezed my eyes shut. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to see the featureless void where its face should have been. I braced myself for a touch, for a sound, for the end. I waited. And waited. Nothing happened. There was no cold touch, no whisper, no sound of dragging feet. There was only the sound of my own blood roaring in my ears. Slowly, fighting every screaming instinct, I forced one eye to open. The closet door was wide open now. I was looking out into my bedroom. It was empty. The room was exactly as I had left it. The bed was unmade. A book was face down on the nightstand. The light from the hallway spilled onto the floor. There was no one there. No figure. No silhouette. Nothing. My mind reeled. Had I imagined it all? The sound? The doorknob turning? Was the fear so complete that my brain was now manufacturing sounds and movements? A wave of dizzying relief washed over me, so potent it almost made me sick. I was losing my mind. That was the only answer. I took a breath. Then another. I was shaking, drenched in sweat, but I was alive, and I was alone. I had to get out of the closet. I had to get out of the apartment. I pushed myself away from the back wall of the closet, my limbs stiff and clumsy. I put one foot forward, stepping out of the darkness and into the dim light of my bedroom. My foot landed on the smooth, cool wood of the floor. I took one more step out, and then I saw it. And my world broke open all over again. There, on the floorboards, right in front of the closet door where I had been hiding, a footprint. It wasn't a shoe print. It was the perfect, unmistakable outline of a bare human foot, and it was wet. A glistening, dark, black shape, stark against the light wood. It looked like a mixture of ash and grimy water, printed onto my floor with impossible clarity. It was right where something would have stood to open the door. It hadn't been a hallucination. It had been here. It had stood right there, on the other side of the door, listening. It had opened the door, looked in at me huddled in the dark. It had seen me. And then it had simply vanished, leaving only this single, damning trace behind. I stared at the black footprint, unable to move, unable to breathe. It wasn't over. It was just getting started. It could go anywhere, it could be anywhere, and it knew exactly where I was. My lungs refused to work. I stared at the footprint. It wasn't a smudge or a random mark. It was an anatomical diagram of dread. 5 toes, a clear arch, a defined heel, black and wet, like someone had stepped in soot and then bled water. It was right there, where it had stood, where it had watched me. The logic didn't just break, it was ground into dust. This wasn't a hacker. This wasn't a stalker playing with my head. This was physical. This was real. The dragging sound, the doorknob turning, the footprint. It had weight. It displaced air. It left a trace. A new rule clicked into place in my head, a piece of ice in the fire of my panic. It wasn't just in the glass. It could come out. It had come out. The thought was a jolt of electricity. If it could come out, it could be fought. If it was physical, it could be hurt. Hope is a stupid thing. It has no place in a situation like this, but it flared up anyway. A tiny, desperate spark. I was no longer just prey. I was in a fight. I had to have a plan. I backed away from the footprint, my eyes locked on it. I moved slowly, one step at a time, out of my bedroom. The hallway felt miles long. Every shadow seemed to pulse. Every corner seemed to hide a shape. I scanned the area. The smashed TV screen in the living room was dark. The picture frames on the hall wall were just pictures. The big mirror, The source of it all reflected the empty entryway. I remembered the phone on the floor. I had seen the burnt room and its screen. I looked down at it. The screen was still black. I saw only the reflection of my own ceiling light. Nothing else. I crouched, my hand shaking, and snatched it up. I angled it, looking for the monster in the machine. Nothing. Just my own pale face, wide-eyed. I turned my attention to the kitchen. The chrome tap. I had seen a scorched beam and a rope in it. I crept to the kitchen doorway, peering in. I looked at the tap. My own kitchen was reflected back at me, clean and simple. I moved closer, my heart a dry knot in my chest. I stared into the back of a spoon on the counter. My own distorted face looked back. The windows were gone. The connection was severed. Why? What had changed? I stood in the kitchen, my mind racing, trying to put the pieces together. It had appeared in the mirror. It had manifested in every reflective surface. It had stepped out of its world and into mine, leaving the footprint. And then it vanished. The psychic noise was gone. The windows were closed. I looked from the kitchen, through the living room, to the entryway where the mirror hung. The mirror. The thought hit me like a physical blow. It was tethered. It was like a diver and an air hose. It could leave the submarine, but it couldn't go far. It had to stay within a certain range of its portal. My bedroom, my kitchen, they were at the edge of its reach. The phenomena were weaker there. The footprint was the high watermark of its power. It had stretched its influence to the absolute limit to open that closet door. It was a spider. The mirror was its web. And I was the fly, buzzing stupidly around the edges, thinking I was safe. But I wasn't safe. I was just outside its primary kill zone. As long as that mirror hung on my wall, this apartment was its territory. My home was its hunting ground. There was only one answer. One way to end this. I had to break the goddamn mirror. The decision was like a switch flipping. The terror didn't go away, but it was joined by a new feeling. Rage. A cold, hard fury. It had invaded my home. It had played with my mind. It had stood over me while I huddled in a closet. No more. I needed a weapon. Something heavy. Something solid. My eyes scanned the apartment. Nothing in the kitchen but knives. Too close. Nothing in the living room. Then I remembered. The hall closet. The one next to the front door. Stuffed in the back, behind the vacuum cleaner and a box of old college textbooks, was a baseball bat. An old Louisville Slugger. Solid ash wood. I moved toward the closet, my steps now purposeful. I was no longer a victim crawling on the floor. I was a man on a mission. The fear was still there, a constant hum beneath my skin, but my hands were steady. I reached the closet, my fingers wrapping around the cool brass of the doorknob. I pulled the door open. The bat was right where I remembered. I reached past the vacuum hose, my fingers brushing against the smooth, worn wood. The weight of it felt good, solid, real. The moment my hand closed around the handle, it happened. Click. Every light in the apartment went out. I was plunged into absolute, suffocating blackness. Not just dark. This was a deep, artificial dark, the kind that swallows sound. The hum of the refrigerator died. The low buzz of the electronics vanished. The only light was a faint, hazy orange filtering through the living room window from the streetlights outside. I froze, the bat clutched in my hand. My heart leaped into my throat. And then I heard the whisper. It wasn't from a phone, it wasn't from a speaker, it was everywhere at once. It was a dry, sibilant sound that felt like it was coming from inside my own skull. Do you think that will help? The voice was not a voice. It was the sound of dead leaves skittering across pavement. It was the sound of dry rot. And it was right here. It was all around me. The spider knew I was coming for the web. Get out of my house, I breathed, my own voice a foreign, trembling sound in the dead air. The whisper answered, closer this time, a cold spot forming right next to my ear. This is my house now. That was it. The last thread of control snapped. I wasn't thinking anymore. I was pure, animal instinct. I gripped the bat with both hands, my knuckles white, and roared. It was a guttural, meaningless sound of defiance. I launched myself out of the closet, into the dim orange haze of the living room, I didn't need to see. I knew where the mirror was. Straight ahead. Against the far wall. Something slammed into my side. A force, not a thing. It was like being hit by a wall of wind. I crashed sideways, my shoulder smashing into the bookshelf. Books rained down on me, their pages fluttering in the dark. Pain shot up my arm. I hit the floor hard, the wind knocked out of my lungs. The bat clattered on the hardwood, just out of my reach. I gasped for air, scrambling on my hands and knees. The floor beneath me vibrated. A low groan filled the room, the sound of stressed wood and metal. The armchair, a heavy leather one by the window, lifted off the floor. It didn't just lift, it tilted, hovering in the air for a second, a dark beast against the orange glow. Then it flew. Not tumbled. It shot across the room like a cannonball, directly at my head. I threw myself flat. The chair screamed over me, so close I felt the wind of its passage, and obliterated the wall where my head had been a second before. Plaster dust exploded into the air, choking me. The sound of splintering wood and crushed drywall was deafening. I was crawling now, a desperate, blind scramble across the floor. My hands slid through spilled dirt from a shattered planter. I ignored it. I had to get the bat. I had to get to the mirror. Another sound. A high-pitched shriek of tortured metal. The floor lamp in the corner bent itself in half, the metal pole twisting like a piece of licorice. It corkscrewed through the air and speared into the sofa, burying itself a foot deep in the cushions with a sickening thump. This was insane. It was a poltergeist on steroids. A tantrum of immense, invisible power. My hand closed over the smooth, round shape of the bat. Got it. I pushed myself up, using the bat as a crutch. The room was a wreck. Furniture was overturned. Debris littered the floor. And in the middle of it all, against the far wall, the mirror was serene, untouched. Its surface was a perfect, calm black, reflecting nothing. I took a step. My bare foot came down on a shard of broken pottery. Pain, sharp and blinding, shot up my leg. I cried out, stumbling, but I didn't stop. I hobbled forward, leaving a wet trail of my own blood mixed with the black ash of its footprint. 1 step. 2 steps. I was in front of it now. The source. The gate. I could feel a coldness radiating from it, a palpable drop in temperature that had nothing to do with the night. I raised the bat over my shoulder, pouring every ounce of fear, rage, and adrenaline into my arms. I put my whole body into the swing. This was it. This was the end. I was going to shatter its world into a million pieces. I swung. The bat sliced through the air with a vicious hiss. It never made impact. A foot from the surface of the glass, the bat stopped dead. It was like I had hit a wall of solid steel. The force of the impact vibrated up the bat, up my arms, and into my teeth. A sound rang out in the dead room. Not the sound of breaking glass, but a deep, resonant, impossibly loud tone. It wasn't a crash. It was a single, pure note, like a giant crystal bell being struck by a hammer. Boom! The sound wave hit me like a fist, throwing me backward. The bat was torn from my grip. It flew across the room and shattered the living room window, raining glass onto the fire escape outside. Air, cold and real, rushed into the apartment. I landed hard on my back, my head cracking against the floor for the second time that night. My vision swam. The single, piercing chime echoed in my bones, fading slowly into the sudden, shocking silence. I lay there, broken and gasping, staring at the ceiling. I could hear traffic outside, a distant siren, the real world. After a moment, I managed to turn my head. I looked at the wall. The mirror was flawless. Not a scratch, not a crack, not a single imperfection. It hung there, placid and perfect. It had defended itself. It had thrown my best effort back in my face and shattered my window with my own weapon. It wasn't in a prison. I was. My head hit the floor. The sound was dull, a wet thud lost in the sharp chime of the bell. The world swam in a haze of black spots and flashing pain. I tasted blood, coppery and warm. I lay on the hardwood, a broken thing in a broken room. The cold air from the shattered window was the only real thing left. It felt like a ghost touching my skin. My breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. My shoulder screamed. My foot was on fire where the pottery had sliced it open. Defeat wasn't a feeling. It was a physical weight, pressing me down into the floorboards. It was over. I had tried to fight. I had lost. This was its house now. I was just the meat in the cage. Minutes passed. Or maybe seconds. Time had stopped making sense. The only sound was the far-off wail of a city siren and the frantic, useless beating of my own heart. I was too tired to move. Too scared to think. All I could do was lie there and wait for the end. Wait for it to pull me into the glass or tear me apart out here. It didn't matter which. But it did nothing. The quiet was worse than the violence. The silence was a question. Slowly, painfully, I pushed myself up onto one elbow. The room was a disaster zone. Chunks of plaster, overturned furniture, spilled dirt, shattered glass. My eyes traveled across the wreckage, avoiding the one thing I didn't want to see. But I had to. I had to look. A final act of defiance. Just to stare into the face of the thing that had beaten me. I turned my head. The mirror hung on the far wall. Flawless. Untouched. It reflected the room perfectly. The toppled armchair. The lamp speared into the sofa. The glittering shards of the window. And me. A pathetic shape lying on the floor in a puddle of my own blood and filth. It was an accurate, cruel portrait of my failure. I kept staring. I don't know why. There was nothing else to do. Then I saw it. It wasn't a big movement. It was small, a shift. In the reflection, my head turned a fraction of an inch before my real head did. I froze. My brain screamed that it was the head injury, a concussion, a trick of the light. I blinked, trying to clear my vision. I looked again. The reflection of me on the floor was gone. I was still on the floor. I could feel the grit and the sticky patch of blood under my hand. But in the mirror, the space where I should have been was empty. The reflection of the room was perfect, but I wasn't in it. My heart stopped. Then, from the edge of the mirror's frame, a figure stepped into view. It was me. It was my height, my build. It wore my clothes, the same torn t-shirt, the same jeans. But it wasn't on the floor. It was standing. Standing tall and straight in the wreckage of the reflected room. It looked around, calm, as if surveying its property. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't make a sound. I was paralyzed, watching this double. The figure in the mirror bent down. Its movements were smooth, effortless. It picked something up off the floor. The baseball bat. The Louisville Slugger that had been torn from my hands and thrown through a window. In the mirror world, it lay right where I dropped it. The figure held it, testing its weight. It swung it once, a lazy, powerful arc through the air. Then it looked directly at me. Its eyes met mine, and it smiled. It wasn't my smile. My smiles were small, tired things. This smile was wide and sharp and full of teeth. It was a predator's smile, a smile of absolute victory and contempt. It was the most horrible thing I had ever seen. It held my gaze for a long moment, that terrible smile fixed on its face. Then it turned away, casual, as if I wasn't worth its attention anymore. It started to walk through the room in the mirror. Its room. I watched, a helpless observer. The me in the mirror seemed to be tidying up. It walked over to the portrait of my parents, which, in my world, was knocked askew on the wall. The reflection reached out and straightened the frame. The action was so normal, so mundane, that it made my blood run cold. It strolled past the smashed television set. In its world, the screen wasn't a spiderweb of cracked glass. The reflection reached out and pressed a button. The screen flickered to life, bathing the mirrored room in a silent blue light. No sound came out, but I could see the images move. A news report. A car commercial. A life I no longer had. This was a new kind of torture. It wasn't just showing me it was powerful. It was showing me it could live my life better than I could. It was living in the home I had just lost. The reflection grew bored with the television. It turned and walked into the kitchen. I pushed myself up, dragging my wounded body across the floor until I could see the kitchen entrance. I watched the mirror. My reflection opened the refrigerator. Not my refrigerator, which was humming quietly in the real world. Its refrigerator. It took out a bottle of water, twisted the cap, and took a long drink. It leaned against the counter, perfectly at ease, the picture of a man relaxing in his own home. It was a ghost wearing my face, haunting my life from the other side of the glass. It knew I was watching. Every casual movement was a taunt. Every calm action was a twist of the knife. It was showing me what I was, a bug trapped in a jar, forced to watch a stranger live in my world. It finished the water, tossed the empty bottle into a trash can that, in my world, was overturned and spilling coffee grounds onto the tile. Then it walked back into the living room. It sat down on the sofa. The real sofa, the one next to me, had a floor lamp sticking out of it like a spear. The sofa in the mirror was pristine. The reflection leaned back, crossed its legs, and put its hands behind its head. It looked comfortable. It looked content. It looked like it owned the place. I just sat there on the floor, bleeding and broken, watching it. The rage was gone. The hope was gone. All that was left was a hollow, empty dread. What was its plan? Was it going to do this forever? Just live in there, a perfect copy, in a perfect world, while I rotted out here? Then the reflection moved again. It stood up. It walked with purpose now, straight toward the front door. My front door. I watched its reflection. It reached the door. It did not try to break it. It did not touch the knob. It simply reached up, and, with slow, deliberate movements, it began to undo the locks. I saw its fingers flip the deadbolt. I saw its hand slide the chain out of its track. In the absolute quiet of my apartment, I heard nothing. But in my head, I heard every click, every scrape of metal. The reflection's hand closed around the doorknob. It turned it. It pulled the door open. It stepped out. The reflection of me was gone. The mirror now showed the inside of my apartment. From the perspective of the open doorway, it was just a room. An empty, silent, perfect room. I stared at the mirror. Then I stared at my own front door. It was 10 feet away. It was closed. The deadbolt was thrown. The chain was in place. It was locked. Secure. Then I heard it. A sound from outside. In the real world. In the hallway of my apartment building. Footsteps. They were soft at first, coming from down the hall, near the elevators. They were unhurried. The sound of someone walking on old carpet. I held my breath, listening. My entire world shrank to that sound. The footsteps grew closer. Thump, thump, thump. They weren't moving away. They were coming towards my door. They were coming for me. The thing in the mirror hadn't just left. It had opened the door from its side to let something in on my side. My mind raced. Who? What? There was no one in the hall. It was 2 a.m. The footsteps stopped. Right outside my door. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I could feel a presence on the other side of that wood. A weight. A pressure. I scrambled backward on the floor, crab walking away from the door, my back hitting the ruined sofa. My eyes were locked on the door, on the brass of the peephole. I waited for it to be torn from its hinges. I waited for the wood to splinter. Instead, there was a knock. Knock, knock, knock. 3 sharp, solid raps. Not frantic. Not angry. Calm. Patient. Confident. Who the hell knocks at 2 a.m? 4 noms. Good. The police? A neighbor who heard the crash? My throat was too dry to speak. I couldn't call out. I couldn't do anything but stare. Another knock. Harder this time. Knock, knock, knock. An idea, stupid and desperate, sparked in my brain. I had to see. I had to know who it was. I pushed myself off the floor, my legs screaming in protest. I stumbled, using the wall for support. I half limped, half crawled the 10 feet to the door. Every inch was agony. I reached the door. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. I leaned forward, pressing my face against the cool wood. My breath hitched. I put my eye to the peephole. The fisheye lens distorted the hallway, bending the walls. In the center of the view, a figure stood there. It was a woman. My heart seized. I knew her. V.Y. It was my ex-girlfriend, V.Y. We hadn't spoken in 6 months. What was she doing here? Now? I-pie. She was looking right at the peephole, right at me. Her hair was the same. Her face was the same. She was wearing the jacket I bought her for her last birthday. Relief, dizzying and complete, washed over me for a split second. It was her. It was a person, a real person. She raised a hand, as if to knock again, and then she smiled. It wasn't her smile. It was a wide, predatory grin that stretched her lips too far. It was a smile that showed too many teeth, a smile of pure, absolute malice. It was the exact same smile I had just seen on my own face in the mirror. My brain refused to connect what my eye was seeing with what I knew. V.Y. That grin. It was impossible. Two concepts that could not exist in the same space. I stumbled back from the door, my wounded foot screaming. A hot poker shoved into my heel. I hit the wall hard, the impact jarring my teeth. My good hand flew to my mouth to stifle a cry, not of pain, but of pure, unadulterated shock. It was a reflex. Stay quiet. Don't let it know you're here. But it already knew. It had knocked. Go away! I yelled, my voice cracking, a pathetic sound in the ruined apartment. V.Y., whatever you're doing, just go away. I was trying to protect her. That was the first, insane thought that flared in the chaos of my mind. The thing in the mirror had done this to me. It would do worse to her. I had to get her away from my door. Get her away from this building. Get her away from me. But even as the thought formed, a colder one slithered in behind it. That smile. That wasn't the smile of a person in danger. That was the smile of the danger itself. I wasn't protecting her. I was locked in here with whatever she had become. Anne, open the door. Her voice came through the thick wood. It was her voice. It was exactly her voice. The same pitch, the same light, anxious tremor she got when she was worried. It cut through me. A wave of confusion and memory washed over the terror. I remembered that voice on late-night phone calls, in crowded restaurants whispering in my ear. Please, I heard a crash. I was in the neighborhood. I saw the lights were on. I was worried. Are you okay? Every word was perfect. Every word was a lie. My eyes darted from the door to the mirror hanging on the far wall. It was still just a mirror now, showing the reflection of my wrecked living room, the overturned couch, the shattered glass. It looked innocent. It looked like a simple piece of furniture. But I knew better. It was a doorway. And it had opened a path for this. I'm fine, I croaked, my throat tight. Just go home, V.Y. It's not a good time. Not a good time? Anne. I heard a scream. Let me in. Her voice was still sweet, still full of that perfect, practiced concern. But then I heard it, underneath her words, so faint I almost missed it. A sound that didn't belong. It was a tiny crackle, a thin electric hiss, like the static between radio stations. It was woven into the fabric of her voice, a thread of corruption in a familiar tapestry. It was the sound of a bad recording, a deepfake. It was wrong. My head injury, I thought. The fall. It's making me hear things. But I knew. Deep in my gut, where the real fear lived, I knew. It was real. You're not V.Y., I whispered, more to myself than to her. Her voice came again, the sweetness curdling just a little. What are you talking about? Of course it's me. Open the door, Anne. You're scaring me. The static was a little louder this time, a faint buzz underneath the word scaring. My back was flush against the wall. I glanced around the room, desperate. The baseball bat was gone, lost somewhere outside in the night. The floor was a minefield of broken glass and pottery. No weapon, no escape. The windows were smashed, but I was on the 3rd floor. My only way out was the door, and the monster was on the other side of it. What do you want? I shouted, my voice gaining a desperate edge of anger. For a moment there was only silence from the hallway. The static was gone. The fake concern was gone. When the voice came back, it was different. It was stripped of all warmth. It was flat, cold and hard as steel. It was a command. Open the door. The doorknob jiggled, once, twice. Then it began to rattle, a frantic, violent shaking. The heavy deadbolt in its housing clanked with each movement. The metal chain shivered in its track. It wasn't trying to pick the lock, it was trying to rip the knob out of the wood. My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild drumbeat of panic. This was it. The game was over. The psychological torment was finished, and the physical violence was about to begin. I pushed off the wall and scrambled away from the door, dragging my bleeding foot behind me. I wedged myself behind the overturned armchair, a pitiful, makeshift barricade. I could see the door clearly from my hiding spot. I watched the brass knob shake and twist. Clank, rattle, shake. The sound was relentless. It was inside my head. It was the only sound in the world. I know you're in there, A.N., the voice boomed, deeper now, distorted, as if it was being pushed through a cheap, overloaded speaker. The static was back, loud and angry. I can smell you. I held my breath. My lungs burned. The monster on the other side of the door was wearing my ex-girlfriend's face, speaking with a corrupted version of her voice, and it was trying to break in and kill me. The sheer bizarre horror of it was enough to make my mind shut down. This couldn't be happening. The rattling stopped. The silence that fell was worse. My ears strained, trying to catch any sound. A footstep. A breath. Nothing. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. What now? Was it gone? Did it give up? Beep! The sound was small. Digital. Clean. It came from the door. I stared. The small LED light on my smart lock, the one I had installed for convenience, had blinked once. It was supposed to be green. It was now red. A quiet, mechanical whirring sound followed. Zzz. Thunk. The deadbolt retracted. I watched, paralyzed, as the metal bolt slid back into the door with a smooth, oiled precision. It hadn't been forced. It had been unlocked. The thing in the hall hadn't needed to break the lock. It had simply told my own security system to open up. The chain, now the only thing holding the door, went taut. Then, with a scream of tortured metal, the screws ripped out of the doorframe. The chain whipped back, striking the wall with a sharp crack. The door swung inward. Slowly, silently, VY stood in the doorway. She was just standing there, framed by the dim light of the hallway. She wore the jacket I bought her. Her hair was the same, but her face, the predatory smile, was gone, replaced by a blank, empty expression. And her eyes, God, her eyes, they weren't eyes anymore. They were voids, two pits of polished black marble, where her bright, laughing eyes used to be. There were no irises, no pupils, no whites, just two perfect, solid black orbs that seemed to drink the light from the room. She took a step inside, then another. Her movements were stiff, jerky, a marionette with a clumsy puppeteer. She was inside. She was in my apartment. My mind finally broke free from its paralysis. I scrambled backward, crab walking over shattered glass, not even feeling the fresh cuts. "Stay back!" I screamed. The thing wearing Vi's skin paid no attention. Its head tilted, and the wide, sharp-toothed smile returned to its face, stretching the lips unnaturally. It wasn't a smile of emotion. It was a display of weapons. It lunged. It wasn't a human movement. It was a predator's pounce, fast and low and brutally efficient. It crossed the space between us in a blur. All I could see were those black eyes and that rictus grin. I threw my arms up to shield my face, twisting my body, bracing for the impact, the tearing, the end of everything. I fell back hard against the floor, my head hitting the hardwood with a sickening thud. This is it. This is how it ends. But the attack never came. Instead of teeth and nails, there was a sound. A shriek. It was a sound of pure, undiluted terror. And it wasn't a sound of rage. It was a sound of agonizing fear. It was Vi's real voice. I opened my eyes. The thing that looked like VY was hovering in the air just inches from my face. Its lunge had been stopped cold. Its limbs were flailing wildly, but it wasn't moving forward anymore. It was moving backward. It was being pulled. It was being dragged back across the room, its heels scraping 2 deep grooves into the wood floor. It was fighting, clawing at the air, its hands reaching for anything to hold on to. The terrifying smile was gone, replaced by a mask of shock and horror. Her mouth was open in that silent, unending scream, and those black eyes, those terrible black holes, were not looking at me. They were wide with terror, staring at something over my shoulder, something behind me. I twisted my head, following her gaze. The mirror. It was the mirror. She was being pulled toward the mirror. An invisible force had hooked into her and was reeling her in like a fish on a line. She thrashed and fought, her real voice finally breaking through the static filter in a choked, desperate sob. "No! Please! Not me! Not again!" She wasn't the hunter. She was the bait. And she had just led the real predator to its next meal. Her body slammed against the surface of the mirror with a deafening crack. But the glass didn't break. It rippled. Like water, for a split second I saw the reflection of the wrecked room warp and distort around her. Then she was gone. One moment she was there, pressed against the glass. The next, the mirror was smooth again. Flawless. It showed the reflection of the empty room, the 2 scratch marks on the floor leading to its base, and me, a pathetic broken shape lying on the floor. She was gone. The thing in the mirror hadn't sent her to kill me. It had used her to get the door open. It had brought her here. She was the target. Or maybe she was just the appetizer. The cold truth washed over me, a wave of ice water that extinguished the last embers of my adrenaline. The reflection in the mirror wasn't my double. It was a trap, and I was locked inside it with the bait already taken. The only question left was, when would it be my turn? I was on the floor, back against the overturned armchair, my mind a blank slate of static. Time stopped. The thing that looked like VY, the thing with the razor-blade smile and the black orb eyes, was frozen in the air. Its lunge, which should have ended my life, had been halted just inches from my face. It was hanging there, suspended, a grotesque puppet whose strings had been abruptly yanked. Its limbs began to thrash. It was a wild, frantic dance of pure panic. But it wasn't moving forward. It was sliding backward, away from me. Slowly at first, then with increasing speed. A high-pitched shriek tore through the air, and this time, there was no digital crackle woven into it. It was real. It was Vi's voice, raw with a terror that dwarfed anything I had felt. What was happening? My eyes darted from her struggling form to the wall behind me. The mirror, the source of all this. An invisible line had been cast from it, hooking into her, and was now reeling her in. Her heels, shod in familiar black boots, scraped against the hardwood, carving 2 deep, parallel lines in the floor. The sound was like nails on a chalkboard, a sound of absolute resistance against an unstoppable force. She clawed at the air, her fingers desperate for purchase on something, anything. The wide, predatory smile was gone, replaced by a mask of slack-jawed shock. Her mouth was open in a scream that had no sound, a perfect O of horror. The solid black eyes, those 2 terrible voids, were no longer fixed on me. They were wide, staring past me, locked onto the thing that was pulling her. The thing in the mirror. I was not the prey. I was just the audience. A cold realization washed over me, a drenching, numbing wave. This entire chase, the knocking, the voice, the hacked lock, the lunge, it was all performance. A show put on for my benefit. She was getting closer to it. As she was dragged backward, her form began to flicker like a bad TV signal. Her edges blurred. The fabric of the jacket I bought her seemed to lose its substance, becoming translucent. I could see the pattern on the wallpaper right through her torso. Her body was dissolving, pixel by pixel, into the air itself. She was being unmade. I pushed myself up on my elbows, a fresh spike of pain shooting up from my foot. Broken glass crunched under my hand. I stared at the mirror. It was no longer just reflecting the ruined room. The surface was humming with a low, bass frequency that I felt in my teeth. And in its depths, something was moving. It was a shadow. A tall, gaunt silhouette without features. No face, no clothes, just a man-shaped hole cut out of the reflected reality of my apartment. It was standing just behind my reflection, and it was raising a hand. It was reaching out from its world into mine, not through the glass, but from the glass. It was reaching for VY. "No, please." Her voice finally found air, a choked, wet sob. "Not me! Not again! Not again!" The words hit me like a physical blow. This had happened before. She knew what this was. She wasn't just bait. She had been bait before. The entity in the mirror wasn't trying to kill her. It was collecting her, dragging her into its flat, silent world. A new kind of fear, colder and sharper than before, sank its teeth into my gut. My terror wasn't just a byproduct of the attack. It was the point. The thing fed on it. It wanted me to watch. It wanted me to feel every second of this powerless, horrific spectacle. My fear was the seasoning for its meal. The room felt like a cage, but the bars weren't the walls or the locked door. The bars were my own senses, forcing me to witness this. Her back was now just a foot from the mirror. Her body was so faint I could barely see it, a shimmering heat haze in the shape of a person. The faceless shadow's hand was almost upon her. My body moved before my brain could argue. There was no plan, no logic, just a raw animal instinct that screamed "No!" I lunged forward. Not a pounce like the thing that wore her skin. It was a clumsy, desperate scramble. I pushed off my good foot, dragging my bleeding one behind me, ignoring the glass slicing into my palms. I threw myself across the last few feet of floor separating us. My fingers brushed against hers. They were cold. So cold, and they felt wrong, like static electricity given form. I wrapped my hand around her wrist, my grip clumsy but absolute. The moment I made contact, the world tilted. A force like a tidal wave hit me. It wasn't physical. It was a pressure, an immense, invisible weight trying to rip her from my grasp. I dug my heels in, leaning back with every ounce of strength I had. My muscles screamed. The tendons in my arm felt like they were about to snap. It was a tug of war with a ghost. "I've got you," I roared, the words tearing from my throat. The room responded. The floorboards groaned. The single light bulb still working in the ceiling fixture flickered wildly, then exploded in a shower of sparks, plunging us into a deeper gloom lit only by the hellish glow of the mirror. It was no longer a reflection. It was a gateway. A swirling vortex of silver and black light that pulsed with a life of its own. I pulled. It pulled harder. Vi's body was caught between two worlds. Her form flickered violently, half solid, half ghost. 1 second, she was almost corporeal, her weight real in my hand. The next, she was a transparent wisp, and my arm felt like it was pulling on nothing but cold air. Her head whipped back and forth, her real eyes, her brown, human eyes, visible for a split second before being swallowed by the black voids again. The force escalated. It was trying to pull us both in now. The scratch marks her heels had made on the floor started to lengthen toward me as I was dragged, inch by painful inch, across the ground. My feet, my legs, the entire weight of my body was nothing against it. We were losing. I looked at her face, her real face. It was there. For just a moment, twisted in pain. Her mouth formed a single word, an I. Something inside me broke. A dam of adrenaline and rage burst. I wasn't going to let this thing have her. I wasn't going to be its entertainment. With a final, guttural scream that came from the deepest part of my soul, I gave one last, monumental pull. I threw my entire being, my weight, my will, everything I was, into that single motion. The tension snapped. It was like a rubber band breaking. The invisible force vanished. All of its immense pressure disappeared in an instant. The sudden lack of resistance sent us flying backward. I landed hard on the floor, Vi's body collapsing on top of me. For a second, there was only the sound of our ragged gasps for air in the near darkness. My ears were ringing. My arm felt dislocated. But she was here. She was solid. She was real. She was unconscious, but she was out of its grasp. I pushed her gently off of me and struggled to sit up. My body ached. My foot throbbed. I was alive. She was alive. We were safe? My eyes went to the mirror. The swirling light had faded. The humming had stopped. It was just a mirror again, reflecting the dark, wrecked apartment. But something was wrong. It had to take something. The tug of war, the immense energy. It couldn't end with it losing. It couldn't end with it getting nothing. I saw the thing it took instead. In the mirror, my reflection was still on the floor, but it wasn't getting up. It was on its hands and knees, head bowed, and behind it stood the faceless shadow. The dark silhouette placed a hand on my reflection's shoulder. I watched, frozen in place, my heart stopping in my chest. My reflection looked up. Its face was pale, its eyes wide with a new and final horror. It didn't look at me. It looked at the shadow holding it. A silent plea. The shadow didn't move. It simply held on. Then it began to pull. My other self, the man in the glass, was dragged backward. He didn't fight. He didn't scream. He was pulled into the shadow, dissolving into its featureless darkness. His legs went first, then his torso, then his face. His terrified eyes the last thing to disappear. Then he was gone. The shadow stood alone in the mirror for a moment, before it, too, receded into the dark reflective surface, leaving nothing behind. Nothing but my own reflection, sitting on the floor, looking back at me. But it wasn't right. I was here, in the room, breathing, heart pounding. My reflection was there, in the glass, perfectly still. Its expression was blank. Its eyes were empty. It wasn't my reflection anymore. It was just a picture, a placeholder. The real one was gone. The silence crashed down harder than any sound. One moment, the world was a high-frequency scream of tearing reality. The next, nothing. Just the ringing in my ears and the dull, heavy throb in my foot. The pressure was gone. The vortex in the mirror was gone. The room was just a room again. Dark. Wrecked. VY was a dead weight on top of me. I felt the slow, shallow rise and fall of her back. She was breathing. My own breath came in, ragged, burning gulps. Air. I couldn't get enough of it. My lungs were fire. My arm, the one I had used to pull her, felt like a disconnected bundle of frayed ropes. I pushed her gently, rolling her onto her side. Her face was slack, pale, unconscious, but here, solid, real. I could touch her cheek and it was skin, not static. She was out of its grasp. We were out. I scrambled back, dragging myself away from the mirror, putting the overturned armchair between us and it. Adrenaline was fading, replaced by a deep, bone-aching exhaustion. I pressed my palms against the floor, feeling the grit of shattered glass and plaster dust. My head swam. We were alive. We were safe. The word felt like a lie in my mouth. A stupid, childish lie. My eyes snapped back to the mirror. It hung on the wall, perfectly straight, uncracked. The frame was unscratched. The surface was clean. It was just a mirror. It reflected the debris on the floor, the broken light fixture dangling from the ceiling, the dark shape of the armchair. A perfect, clean reflection of a ruined space. There was no humming, no silver and black light, no shadow standing behind my shoulder. It was as if the last 10 minutes had never happened. That was worse. Somehow, that was so much worse. The placid, reflective surface was a mockery, a denial of the thing that had almost torn us apart. It had played its game, and now it was putting the board away, leaving me to clean up the pieces. A new kind of cold seeped into me. Not the quick, sharp fear of an attack, but a slow, creeping dread. It had to take something. That much power, that much force. It couldn't just lose. A tug-of-war with reality itself doesn't end with one side just letting go of the rope and walking away empty-handed. It took my reflection. I saw it happen. I watched it pull the other me into its featureless void. I needed to see. My good foot pushed, my bad one screamed in protest. I ignored it. I crawled, hand over hand, through the wreckage. I had to see the proof. I had to look it in its dead, glass eye and see what it had done to me. I reached the far wall and used it to pull myself up. My whole body shook. My gaze locked on the television. The screen was black, a perfect rectangle of polished darkness. I leaned in, my face inches from the glass, looking for the faint outline of my own features. Nothing. I saw the reflection of the wall behind me, the crooked picture frame, the light switch, but where my face should have been there was only more wall, as if I were made of glass. No! The word was a whisper. No, no, no! My heart started a frantic, sick rhythm against my ribs. I stumbled into the small hallway, toward the bathroom. My hand fumbled for the light switch. The bare bulb above the vanity flickered on, illuminating the small medicine cabinet. Its door was a mirror. I stared. The bathroom was there. The grimy tile, the sink, the light bulb glowing in the reflection. But the space in front of the sink was empty. I was standing right there. I could feel the cold tile under my feet. I could see my hand resting on the doorframe, but in the mirror there was nothing. No man, no fear-strained face, no blood-matted hair, just an empty bathroom. A wave of nausea hit me. I lurched back, my hand flying to my mouth. I looked down at my own body. My chest was rising and falling. My hands were trembling. I was real. I was here. But the world had stopped agreeing with me. Panic clawed its way up my throat. I needed proof. I needed to connect with something outside this apartment. Phone. My phone. I scrambled back into the living room, frantically patting my pockets before I saw it lying near the doorway, its screen miraculously intact. I snatched it up. My thumb shook so badly it took 3 tries to unlock it. The screen flared to life. Normal. I had service. I stabbed at my contacts, calling the first name I saw. My sister. It rang. Once. Twice. Hello? Her voice, tired and annoyed. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Jess? Jess, can you hear me? Anne? What the hell? It's 3 a.m. Listen to me. Something happened. Something bad. I need you to... I stopped. What? What could I ask her to do? Hey, a ghost in my mirror stole my reflection. Can you swing by? I sounded insane. Anne? Are you drunk? You sound weird. No. I looked at the dark screen of my phone as I spoke. I could see the reflection of my ear and the side of my head. No, wait. I could see the ceiling behind where my head should be. I just needed to hear your voice. Okay, you're freaking me out. Is this about VY? Did you two fight again? No, it's not that. Everything's fine. The lie burned my tongue. I'm sorry, I'll call you tomorrow. I hung up before she could reply. My hand dropped to my side, the phone feeling impossibly heavy. It worked. The TV probably worked. The world outside this apartment was still turning, but I was no longer fully in it. I was a glitch. A man-shaped hole in reality. A soft groan came from the floor. V? Why? I rushed to her side. Her eyelids fluttered. She coughed, a dry, racking sound. Anne? Her voice was a cracked whisper. I'm here. I knelt beside her, my hand finding her shoulder. I'm right here. It's over. She blinked, her eyes trying to focus on my face. Then they went wide. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking past me. At the mirror. A shudder ran through her entire body. The man, she stammered, trying to push herself up. The man from the picture, he was here. My blood ran cold. What picture? The one online. The one you clicked on. The crooked mirror auction. She was hyperventilating now, her eyes darting around the room, as if expecting the thing to leap out of the walls. It wasn't just a mirror, Anne. The listing, it had a story. About the man who owned it. A man who lost his shadow. They found him catatonic a week later. I tried to tell you. I called you, I texted you, but you wouldn't listen. I was coming here to warn you. Her breath hitched. She looked at the smashed front door, the hacked lock. It got me, she whimpered. On the stairs. It pulled me in. It wore my face. Her body trembled violently. It was going to kill you, and it was going to make me watch. The pieces clicked into place with a sickening finality. This wasn't a random curse from some dark corner of the web. This was a specific trap. The mirror didn't just haunt a place, it chose a target. And tonight, it had chosen me. VY had just been caught in the crossfire, a tool to be used against me, a perfect instrument of terror. It's gone, VY. I promise, I said, my voice trying for a calm I didn't feel. I fought it. We're safe now. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a desperate, frantic hope. How? What did you do? How could I explain it? How could I tell her that I had engaged in a metaphysical tug-of-war and ripped her back from a dimension made of shadow? How could I explain what had happened to my reflection? I didn't have to. The mirror explained it for me. My gaze drifted from her face back to the large, ornate mirror on the wall. From my angle on the floor, I could see her reflection perfectly. She was propped up on her elbows, her expression terrified, her hair a mess, a perfect mirror image. And I saw something else. Her reflection, the woman in the glass who looked exactly like her, was not looking at the real VY. She was looking directly at me. Time slowed. The ringing came back to my ears. My breath caught in my chest. The woman in the mirror, the copy of VY, held my gaze. Her face was not frantic or scared. It was calm. Coldly, terribly calm. She saw me. The mirror didn't reflect me, but she, a reflection herself, could see me. Then she did something that shattered the last bit of sanity I had left. Slowly, deliberately, her reflection raised a hand to its lips. A single finger pressed against them. A gesture for silence. Shh. And then, just as slowly, she shook her head. A single, sharp, negative motion. Don't tell her. A warning. My body turned to ice. It wasn't a reflection. Not anymore. It was something else. A gatekeeper. A witness. A thing left behind in the glass. It knew the price I'd paid. And it was warning me not to speak of it. Anne? Vi's real voice cut through the fog. Anne, what is it? What's wrong? You're as white as a sheet. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the mirror. From her other self. It held my stare for a second longer, its eyes boring into me with an intelligence that did not belong in a reflection. Then, its eyes flicked away. Its expression shifted, and in an instant it was a mirror image again, perfectly mimicking the real Vi's worried face. The moment was over. The connection was severed. But I had seen it. I knew. I finally understood the full transaction. I hadn't won. I hadn't beaten it. I had made a trade. A soul for a soul? No. Nothing so grand. It was a barter. Conducted in a moment of pure, screaming instinct. I had thrown a piece of myself into the void to buy her freedom, my connection to the physical world, my shadow, my reflection. I was untethered. I looked down at my hands. They were my hands, solid and real, but when I held them up, I knew they would cast no shadow on the wall. When I walked past the dark window, no ghost of my shape would walk with me. I was here, but I wasn't. A phantom in my own skin. The mirror on the wall was no longer a threat. It had taken what it wanted. Its business with me was concluded. Now, it was just an object. A receipt for my damnation. A constant, silent reminder of the part of me that was gone forever. It didn't need to show me monsters anymore. It simply showed me nothing. And in that blank, empty space where I was supposed to be, I felt a horror far deeper and more permanent than any fanged creature or shadowy man. It was the horror of erasure. VY was safe. But I was gone. And I wondered, with a cold, sinking certainty, how long it would be before the rest of the world stopped seeing me too. Get up. The words scraped my throat. VY, get up. We're leaving. My hands were under her arms, hoisting her. She was limp, a dead weight, heavier than she should be. Or maybe I was just that weak. My body was a spent battery. Every muscle screamed. I couldn't look in the mirror. I refused. I kept my back to it. My whole world narrowed to the 10 feet between us and the broken front door. That was the finish line. What? Anne, I can't. My head, she mumbled, her feet stumbling on the wrecked floor. We can't stay here. I grabbed my jacket from the floor. I shoved her phone into her pocket. My wallet, my keys, the essentials. That's all we were. A collection of essentials trying to get out. My eyes scanned the room, automatically cataloging the damage. Then they snapped away. I didn't want to see the mirror. I didn't want to see the space where her reflection was staring at me, at the hole in reality I had become. The warning. Shh. Don't tell her. I couldn't. How could I? I had to get her out, away from the receipt of my own damnation hanging on the wall. I pulled her toward the doorway, my bad foot protesting with a hot, sharp pain. I ignored it. Pain was real. Pain was grounding. It meant I was still here. For now. We were almost there. My hand reached for the splintered wood of the doorframe. Freedom. Just a few more steps and we'd be in the hallway. Then the stairs. Then the street. The real world. A world that still, I hoped, reflected me. We just had to get out. A sound cut through the air. It wasn't a creak from the floorboards or a groan from the wrecked apartment. It was clean. Digital. An electronic melody that had no place in this ruin. Vi's phone, ringing from her pocket. We both froze. My hand hovered inches from the door. We stared at each other. Her eyes were wide, round pools of fear. Who would be calling her at this hour? Don't, I said. The word came out a reflex. A command. The ringing continued. A cheerful, stupid tune that was a violation against the silence. It was an intrusion. Something from the outside world trying to get in, and I didn't want any more of the outside world in here. Not now. VY fumbled in her jacket, the one I'd just shoved on her. Her hand came out shaking, holding the lit-up screen. It's a weird number, she whispered. No ID. Don't answer it, VY. Let's just go. My voice was urgent. The sound was wrong. A wrong note in a song I never wanted to hear again. It was a wire, a connection back to something I couldn't see, but she wasn't listening. Her thumb was already swiping across the screen. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was a desperate need to connect with anything normal after what she'd just been through. She raised the phone to her ear. Hello? I watched her face. Her breathing was shallow. She listened. Her eyes stayed locked on mine, but they were distant. She wasn't seeing me anymore. She was seeing whatever words were being poured into her ear. The seconds stretched. 1, 2, 10. A lifetime. She didn't say anything else. She just listened. And her face began to change. The little bit of color she had regained drained away. Her skin went the color of ash. Her knuckles, gripping the phone, turned white. Her jaw went slack. The phone was still pressed to her ear, but I knew the person on the other end had finished talking. The silence coming from the device was louder than the ringing had been. Her hand dropped. The phone didn't fall. It just hung at her side, suspended from her limp fingers. Her eyes were glazed. Hollow. V. Why? I took a step toward her. Who was that? She didn't answer. Her gaze was fixed on the far wall, on nothing. A tiny tremor started in her chin. V. Why? Talk to me. What did they say? I grabbed her shoulder, gently at first, then harder. I needed to shake her out of it. Who the hell was on the phone? Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She swallowed hard, the sound loud in the dead air. Anne, she finally whispered. The name was a cracked thing, broken. That was Kyle. Kyle, our friend. A graphic designer who lived 5 blocks away. A guy we had beers with last week. The name made no sense. Why would he call her from a blocked number in the middle of the night? My mind raced, trying to find a logical reason, a rational explanation. A prank, a drunk dial. Anything but this. What did he want? My grip on her shoulder tightened. Her eyes finally met mine, and what I saw in them made my own blood run cold. It was a new fear, a different fear. Not the terror of a monster in the room, but the dawning horror of a world falling apart. He said, She took a shaky breath. He was so happy, excited. He said he just got a delivery. An online auction. The words hit me like stones. Online auction. He bought a table and an old writer's desk. An antique. He said it was beautiful. Her voice was trembling so hard she could barely form the words. She was reciting a script, a message she was forced to deliver. He set it up in his studio. And then it started making a sound. My heart hammered against my ribs. A sick, fast rhythm. No, it couldn't be. What sound, VY? I already knew. I didn't want to know, but I knew. Music, she whimpered, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Faintly, like from an old music box. He thought he was imagining it. But it kept getting louder. He was calling to tell me how weird it was. How cool. He wanted us to come see it. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking past me. At the mirror. The big, ornate mirror hanging on the wall. The mirror from the auction. Then she delivered the final blow. Her voice dropped to a dead flat tone. The call cut out, Anne. Right after he said the music stopped. There was just a click, and then a scraping sound, like heavy furniture being dragged across a wood floor. And then nothing. The line went dead. A scraping sound. The words echoed in the silence of my apartment. Echoed in the hollow space in my head. A scraping sound. Like the chair I'd overturned. Like the sound the entity made when it moved things. It wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't random. My mind, which had been a fog of terror and adrenaline, suddenly became crystal clear. The pieces didn't just click into place. They slammed together with the force of a tectonic shift, rearranging my entire understanding of what had happened. The man from the picture. The one VY saw online. The story of the man who lost his shadow. The link she sent me. To the auction site. The crooked mirror. Kyle's new table. An online auction. The same words. My breath hitched. I turned, slowly, and faced the mirror. I looked at the ornate wooden frame. At the clean, reflective glass. At the perfect copy of VY, her face a mask of terror. Its eyes met mine. Its expression was no longer a warning. It was a confirmation. A silent, smug admission. It wasn't the mirror. The entity wasn't in the mirror. The evil wasn't bound to that single object, a haunted antique passed from victim to victim. That was a ghost story. A simple, easy-to-understand lie. The truth was so much worse. The mirror was a window, a door, a terminal. And it wasn't the only one. The shop, the online store, antiquities and curios, the elderly woman with the kind smile on the website's About Us page. I had thought she was just a seller, getting rid of a cursed object she couldn't handle. A wave of nausea washed over me. My legs felt weak. She wasn't getting rid of it. She was selling them. Plural, she was distributing them. It wasn't one cursed object, it was a network. A web. And she was the spider at the center, casting her lines out into the city, one auction at a time. The mirror. The writing desk. What else? A music box? A grandfather clock? A porcelain doll? How many cursed packages had been delivered tonight? How many people, like Kyle, were excitedly unboxing their own personal hells right now? This wasn't a haunting. It was an infection. An invasion. And the website was the delivery system. My legs moved without thought. I stumbled past VY, my hand bracing on the wall. I reached the window, my knuckles white as I gripped the grimy sill. My apartment was on the 5th floor. It looked out over a dozen other buildings, a canyon of brick and glass and flickering lights. A city full of people. A city full of windows. I stared out into the night. It wasn't the same view I saw every day. Something was wrong. The rhythm was off. There, across the street, a 10th floor apartment. The light in the living room window flickered. On. Off. On. Off. A frantic, irregular pulse. It wasn't a faulty wire, it was wrong. Next to it, another window. The blue-white glow of a television suddenly flared to life, casting strobing shadows against the ceiling. My eyes scanned lower. A building down the block. Another window, dark a second ago, now glowed a soft, warm yellow. Then it blinked out. Then another one, 2 floors down. Flick, flick, flick. It was happening everywhere. A silent epidemic spreading from home to home, like a string of lights being plugged in, one bulb at a time. The Antiquities and Curios delivery truck had made its rounds, and then I heard it. It wasn't loud. It was so faint I almost missed it, a thin sound carried on the night air. A scream. High and sharp. It came from far away, swallowed almost instantly by the city's hum. Then another, from a different direction. Closer this time. A man's shout, cut short. My gaze drifted down to the street below. A man was running, just a small figure under the orange streetlights, sprinting down the empty sidewalk. He wasn't jogging. He was running for his life. He glanced back over his shoulder at something I couldn't see, and then he pumped his arms harder, his flight a desperate, silent movie. I looked at my own hands, pressed flat against the cold glass of the window pane. I was solid. I was here. But when I looked at the reflection, there was nothing. Just the flickering lights of the city behind me, a city that was being unplugged from reality. I saw the empty space, where my own terrified face should be. I hadn't won. I hadn't survived. VY was safe behind me, but out there, the game was just starting. I had only made it through the tutorial. The real thing was loading now, all across the city. The scraping sound Kyle heard wasn't just in his apartment. It was the sound of the board being set. And me? I was a ghost. A man without a shadow, without a reflection, standing at a window watching the world end, one flickering light at a time. I was the only one who had seen behind the curtain. And I was completely, utterly erased, powerless to stop it, powerless to even warn anyone. The screams were getting a little louder now, a little more frequent, and I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, a cold, hard stone in my gut, that soon no one would be able to hear them over the music.